Podcasts and dreams are similar. They're areas where the repressed conscious mind escapes.
There you go.
Now, see, it's usually I end the sentence with podcast, and this time it started.
Okay.
But when they say that line in the movie, it felt like, of course, they're talking about the internet.
Are they?
You're nodding silently.
I'm trying to remember the exact line.
The
Yes.
internet and dreams are similar.
Right.
They're areas where the
Right,
repressed
right,
conscious
right.
mind escapes.
No, the internet's not like that at all, though.
No,
The internet is very
chill.
Chill.
chill
Normal.
I would
and
say
regulated.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, yeah, it is the opposite of repression. Whatever that means for you.
Yeah, it's a 2006 statement.
Yeah, the net.
Right. I mean, in a certain way, I think the statement is still true.
Yeah, it's all just, it's all out there. We can't control it.
Right.
Everyone's mental states colliding with everyone else's, right?
Yes.
In ways that we can't predict.
Yes.
Good ways.
Great.
Major smile.
The best thing is
Major
when people
smiles.
when
That's a
people
new
share
character
dreams.
feature.
Hey, major smile.
I mean, I love letting my subconscious go wild on Elon Musk's internet.
Yes. He's finally made it. I mean, this is what I love about Elon's internet. If I can just take a moment here.
Yes, let's
One-
talk about Elon Musk.
One, comedy is now
Love it.
legal again.
You want to highlight this section for
Comedy
deletion?
is now legal again.
Yes.
A.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah.
And B, my unconscious can finally roam free.
Mm.
You know?
It was all bottled up before.
Elon took it off the leash.
Yeah. Woof woof.
And my unconscious is making jokes all the time because that's legal again.
If there's anything I know about you right now, it's that you're funnier and happier online than ever.
Correct.
We're laughing.
Just strolling
We're
through the
laughing.
fields,
We're
making jokes.
laughing.
We're laughing. We're having a great time. What is this? Where are we? This room. It feels so familiar and yet somehow odd.
Mm.
The dimensions are shifting in
are we
real time.
A DC mini?
David, we're at the end of a BC mini.
Wow.
Look at that.
Did you just have
I
that in
like
the back
that.
pocket
That-
this whole
no,
time?
you just made that up.
It
And
hit
that's
me.
Damn.
It hit me in real
And
time.
that's good.
Your subconscious is full of jokes. It's true.
Because it's legal again. We are sadly at the end of a BC mini. Why do I say sadly? It's been a great run, but unfortunately, this is a career that ended far too soon.
Yes, true. This is the final film of Satoshi Kon, who we've been covering on this podcast.
This podcast, Blank Check with Griffin and
There
David.
you
I'm
go.
Griffin.
I'm David.
It's a podcast about filmographies, directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want.
Mm.
And sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they parade. Baby.
Sure.
Led by the refrigerator and the mailbox.
It's another thing that feels like the internet is that parade.
Just,
yeah.
just,
Just
just a
shit.
cacophony of,
Yes.
of products.
Yes.
Yeah.
Products and memes and half-remembered clips. This has been a miniseries on the films of Satoshi Kon, as you said, and this is sadly his final film he ever made.
Do you want to say the name of it?
Well, the name of this BC mini has been Papricast.
Pod Precast.
Are you-
Pod Precast.
Are you kidding me?
Of course.
Pod Precast. I fucked it up, but Pod Precast.
He always forgets. That's why I looked at him.
And today we're talking about Paprika.
That's right. That's
Pod-
right.
Yes.
Podprika.
And who is here with us in studio?
This is what I want to talk about.
But the mother of Blankies herself.
She's here.
Hello,
From-
my children. Hi.
FX's Shogun from the FX Shogun podcast.
That's right. Yeah, we see you starting a rival podcast.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, it's I'm steering the ship there.
Knocking us way
Right
down
into
the
yours.
charts. Yeah. David, you had a point you wanted to make right before we started recording.
So this is Emily Yoshida is here.
The great Emily Yoshida.
It's me. It's Emily Yoshida. Hi.
When do you think was Emily's last in-person episode with us, Griffin Newman? Answer, please.
Was it Mad Max Fury
That's
Road?
correct.
Oh, no,
Mad
that's
Max
true.
Fury Road.
And that was literally weeks before COVID. I was here February of 2020.
That's correct. It was when you were staying with me.
Yeah.
You were visiting town. It was
Mhm.
recorded in February. There was a giant audio boom problem.
Right.
We
So
lost
we
a
lost
bunch
like 40 minutes of that
That's
episode.
right.
Yep, that was
Which
a
is
real
sad.
nightmare for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
We were
that
very
was
bad.
also when I introduced C Genes, of course.
Fuck, I forgot
course.
about
And
that.
that made it? We didn't lose that?
That's what caused the other things to
thankfully
go away.
Yeah.
we're able to hold on to that part of the episode.
Right. Unfortunately, Morton Joe was never mentioned once in the episode. We lost all of that, but C. Jeans made the cut.
Like that, and can you name Emily's episodes since then?
Yeah, I think I can.
Okay, well then I won't even speak on it anymore.
I mean, look, we established some rules on this show in general. People can't be on pod rules. We on this podcast try to not have the same guests appear in consecutive series.
Yeah, it's kind of like an unwritten sort of baseball rule,
Let
right?
alone
like for us. Yeah,
appear twice on the same series.
sure.
Emily is the mother of Blanky. She breaks
Emily's
the
I'm
rules.
breaking all the rules.
Right.
Yeah,
So on that same series main feed, she also did Babe on Patreon.
she did.
One of my favorites, honestly, that we've
Yep.
ever recorded.
Yep. That was
Uh,
early COVID too. That
That
was
was
the
an
early
early
one.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was my first Zoom one I think I ever did. With
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an early Zoom for us as well.
And then we did a very
I'm not gonna go in
normal
order.
episode.
I'm not going to go in order
Oh,
here.
okay, fine.
Dark Star.
Yeah, okay. So that one, at least Ben was with Emily.
Yeah,
Right.
that
That
was
was fun.
kind
That
of
was nice.
Yeah.
technically a half in person.
Mhm.
Ben
Yeah.
made a pilgrimage to Casa Yoshida.
But there was one in
And-
between.
The extremely normal one was when I downed an entire bottle of wine during the Marwin record because I couldn't believe you guys liked it.
Kind of like that movie.
It made me
I-
feel like I was going insane.
I was
pretty good.
also drinking an entire bottle of wine.
Yes.
But I was coming at it, I guess, from a different
An
angle.
opposite
I
angle.
was drinking the bottle of wine because I liked it so
It was
much.
celebratory.
It was celebratory, yes.
Oh, I was drinking too, apparently.
I think we
I
were
think we're
all
all-
pretty
Yeah.
drunk on the Marwin episode,
Yeah.
which is why it was so fun.
Great episode,
That's
probably.
that's
Don't
like
remember
a
it.
November, December.
I was
It
sitting
was
on the
posted
floor
in January
of my
21.
mom's
Yeah.
spare room
Yeah.
in North Carolina, like deep holiday season COVID, holiday season 2020.
Yeah.
My wife would have been like 8 months pregnant.
Yes.
It was
We were
like
all
10 at night.
Super
Right.
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dark Star, though. And then, can you remember the other two? Two
Uh,
others.
Well, Handmaiden
others.
was the most recent.
Yes.
Yes.
And the one in between would be
Emily made nobody mad with her takes on this episode.
I was really, chill.
Oh, the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody liked everything I had to say on the beach episode. Everybody had really nice things to say about me personally.
Right.
Uh,
Well, because the
What's
internet.
important is when people disagree with you, they never make it personal.
No, the
No,
internet
no, no,
dreams
no.
are similar.
yeah.
They
yeah.
attack you in your most sensitive spots.
So Emily's on here to say that
They poke
Paprika's
the
a
bruises
big bag
your
of shit.
subconscious. Yes.
Yeah.
It'd be funny if you came on and we were like, guys, Paprika? I don't like
Yeah.
it.
Satoshi
I
Kon
mean,
is
like
baby.
Paprika the character. Like
Sure.
Paprika is baby and not all that,
Yeah.
actually.
Wow.
Um, Coming in hot.
Very
Coming in hot.
Love you guys. Not you. I'm talking to the Blankies.
I know you don't love me,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you have no love for me. Here you are
Here I
to
am.
talk about Paprika.
Mm.
Sort of his opus. We've been discussing this.
Yeah.
Even if it's not your favorite of his movies.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. I actually don't really know what my favorite is, having just watched all of them in preparation for this one. I mean, there's only 4 of them.
there are only 4.
I think that in a way that maybe will become thematically relevant in our discussion down the line, I think that between Perfect Blue and Paprika, you kind of have a balance of everything that's great about Satoshi Kon.
That's right.
And I think this one has some of that. It kind of reminds me a bit, especially as like a quote unquote last film, although we can't say that officially on the record yet. It does sort of remind me of Boy and the Heron as Miyazaki's
Yes.
Right.
quote unquote final film, just
Sure.
being kind of like an unbound unleashing of stuff. Although I think that Paprika is, for all its messiness and wildness, is still a pretty like conveniently tidy final statement on what he's up to, what he's interested in.
Meaningfully or not, like whether he meant to or not.
Yeah, it's actually like, I mean, that final scene, which we'll get to, is sort of like, you can't really imagine a more perfect note to end on for
No.
an incredible career.
That's what's wild is when the second to last shot of this movie is the pan across
yeah,
the marquee.
his short but illustrious filmography.
Right. And like watching this in 06 or 07 or whatever, you're like,
Mhm.
okay, is that too cute? And then
Yeah.
when this is his last movie, you're like, that is profound.
Yeah.
It is profound that this movie ends with him showing his career up until this point,
Yeah.
and then the character buying the ticket.
I mean, to be fair, he might have kind of known.
Yeah.
Like he had health issues up to this point. Like
Right.
it was it pancreatic cancer?
Pancreatic
Yes.
cancer,
Yeah.
exactly,
I mean,
yeah.
Which
Th-
really
yes.
hits you hard and
Right,
fast.
very
But
fast,
he had,
yeah.
like many animation directors and people who work in the field, his health was pretty abysmal.
Sure.
So I think he might have known that.
I mean, I was saying this on a recent episode because the bout of pancreatic cancer that he finally, came to, there was 3 months between diagnosis and death. Like
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
pretty speedy, but as
Yeah.
you said, he had other issues up until that point in time.
Yeah.
It is hard not to look back at his entire career through the prism of, was this a guy who knew that he wasn't going to have a lot of room to work?
Yeah.
You look at how quickly he worked and how like every film has the energy of, I need this to work if this is the only film I ever get to make in my life. Like
Yeah.
every movie he makes has the energy of, I'm making this like this is my final statement.
And this is like everything is in this.
Yes.
I would say Tokyo Godfathers is maybe the exception, but like, yeah, Millennium Actress and Paprika feel. I would say like Millennium Actress feels kind of like the lost highway to Paprika's Mulholland Drive.
I think
if
it's a
you
good
get my
take.
meaning.
Uh-huh.
Love it.
Not to preview your guys' March Madness.
Lynch just won March Madness.
Yeah,
which is great.
As of
We're-
yesterday.
Let's be clear.
good.
We're
Like-
happy about it.
Everybody's happy about it.
Everyone's going to fucking read
You
into
guys are
that.
going to be
This is
talking
the
about so
problem.
many dreams within the next year.
This is the problem.
Yeah.
Me saying I'm happy about it, everyone's going to go like, he sounded really angry when he said
Pissed
that.
off.
Good outcome. We're happy.
It's fine.
Don't say it that way because now they're
That is-
actually going to.
It's fine.
Has
That's the
has
wrong
David
way to
I'm, like,
say it.
putting
has
way too
David
much spin
ever
on it.
said that's fine in another tone, in
No.
a tone that
Fine.
sounds more
I'm not
happy?
mad.
I'm
no,
not-
I love David Lynch. I love him
See,
more than
you can't-
you.
True.
You can't
but I
even
like
say-
him a lot.
But you like him too.
I want you to raise the roof right now, David.
Yeah, David, you got to.
Here's the
Okay,
thing. Here's the
okay.
thing. Here's the thing about David Lynch.
Yeah.
When someone wins our March Madness, Amazon.com, Blu-ray.com, time for me to search for what discs I need to buy. I fucking own them all.
Interesting.
I
you
just
go.
needed to buy like one.
yeah.
Twin Peaks is the one thing where I'm like, do I invest in a
I was
set
I was
there?
messaging you yesterday.
That's a tricky choice.
Because
And there's a lot of different
I splurged
sets.
on the super limited one.
You got the really fancy one. I'm
Do
like,
you
do
have
I want
any
that?
form of any of it?
I used to own the
Gold box?
original
The gold
series
box?
on.
oh, the
like
VHS one.
on not on VHS. I had it on like DVD.
So I'm guessing
in
it was the
gold box.
college.
yeah, with the
It's like
kind
a
of
blue-
green and blue
Green and blue, and it had
spines.
like a sort of slip case.
Yeah, yeah.
That was, but those were British.
Wait, so that wasn't the gold box. That was the original.
No,
it
that's
was
pre-gold
pre-gold
box.
box.
Oh my
And it was
God.
pre-
Such
we have
We
fucking
have to keep
nerds.
saying gold
pre
box.
season 3. Like it was when Twin
Right.
Peaks was just this 2-season
Right.
thing. But I'm wondering about that. Yeah, because I'd like something. I'm just wondering if I need to splurge on the thing you got or get the slightly less,
The television.
the sort of
collection.
like, right, the sort of $100 kind of,
Just spend $100.
where he spent like $300.
I didn't spend that
Okay,
much.
all
I
right,
got-
I take it back. I take it
I
back.
got a discount on eBay. I did some aggressive best offer.
Very good, very good.
I mean, you got to keep David Lynch and cigarettes. Like you got to pay up.
Yes,
Oh,
I
yeah.
agree. Keep him in cigarettes. No, we were texting with. We have a group text now with our buddy Sean Fennessy and Tim Simons
wow.
called News and Deals.
Dork,
That is like the big
dork
book.
text.
That is basically just us sharing.
Yeah.
Oh, did you see the Shout Factory's having a sale?
Every time
Oh my
we
God.
send a text in there, I have had one less sex in my life, right? Like
Yeah.
my amount of times having had sex
You have a
goes down.
you have a photo of your daughter that Back to the Future style is starting to fade.
Never.
But yes, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
all
yeah.
just us posting announcements of discs and
Fucking
sales of
disc
discs.
nonsense.
And we texted the day before March Madness ended. I was like, look, either outcome right now between Spike and Lynch. I'm excited that tomorrow I get to order a bunch of Blu-rays.
Yeah,
Oh
although
my
if Spike had won, it
God.
would have been
That's
it's
a lot.
so-
That's a
well,
lot of money.
he's also we discussed a lot, but he's got a lot of missing discs.
He
The
does.
man
Oh,
needs
really?
his catalog needs to be better served.
Girl 6 only available on Blu-ray in Japan.
What?
She Hate Me only in France.
Really?
4 of
Like
them
I
have
said,
gotten no release
there's-
post DVD.
There's probably some weird French reason for that too.
So we're
Oh
the
yes,
French.
he's very good. He is sperm.
film, finally.
Yeah, he's mean to the
He
lesbians.
has been. This film has been cancelled. Yeah.
He's very good.
Get
Wait,
on the
what-
bus. You can't Bye.
The French becoming Russian or sort of Dracula-esque in my which one?
She's got to have it. Get on the bus.
Yeah. She's Gotta Have It is the one that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Because that's
They
obviously
and
a
they did
very
the Netflix
celebrated
series
film.
and everything. Yeah.
Is it not streaming on Netflix? I thought it was
It might
on
be.
Netflix.
It might be. It's
Was?
probably streaming somewhere.
I don't know if it still is.
But why isn't there a very nice,
I agree. I think Criterion has said they're working on that one. Weirdly,
Anyway,
even
not
though
important.
Spike, longer career, more missing films, I think I own more Spike discs. Lynch is going to be a big
Lynch
shopping
isn't-
spree for me.
Lynch isn't so much your fella, but maybe
But I like him, and I'm excited to do the series.
God, you guys are so excited. This is so
we
cool.
are.
We're just tired. It's been a long month.
it's been kind of a long
It's
month.
been kind of a long month.
I
I
mean,
do-
when is March not just a blast for you guys?
True.
Yeah. But this is better than some marches, I would
Yes.
say.
Yeah, I remember.
We've had some pretty rough marches.
Yeah.
Ben's nodding.
But it is true that between Kon and Lynch in the same year, this is a very dreamy,
Very dreamy year.
subconscious
Absolutely.
year for Blank Check.
2024, year of the
Um,
dream.
You were
Living the
the other
dream.
day. I like this 2024 year of the dream.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully
David-
it ends with the biggest dream of all, the return of Donald
Death.
Trump to White
Yes.
House. What's that? What's that?
Wow. Who's
Anytime
getting
you-
political now and who's pissed off at who? Wow, the table is really turned.
Anytime I have a thought like that, I should then cut in like refrigerators, like doing a parade,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Just
Can I
like
do
chaos.
Can I do my impression of David on November 7th?
Mm.
It's fine.
Yeah, that's
oh
me.
my God.
What are you gonna
It's
do?
Fine. Yeah.
All right, what were you gonna say, Griffin?
I was gonna say the other day you texted you were watching Kurosawa's Dreams,
Yeah.
and you said every director should make one of these.
I kind of just like the idea of like if a director's hitting like their 70s or 80s,
Yeah.
the Hollywood, as was the case there, famous directors like
Right.
Scorsese and George Lucas should just be like, hey, here's some money. Go
Yeah.
make a movie about some dreams you've been
Yes.
having, just as a kind of like, peace out.
Now, this is the movie that's literally about dreams and was kind of his
This movie,
passion,
Paprika.
his dream
Mhm.
project for so long.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
for 10 years he spent trying to
Yeah.
get together. I just do think it's interesting that in between Tokyo Godfathers and this, the thing he had been aiming to finally get made, he does Paranoia Agent,
Mhm.
which you could argue is kind of his dreams. Like that is his drafts
Oh,
folder.
Oh, sure.
Where
Okay.
he was
Yeah.
just like, let me do a TV series
His-
where
Yeah,
just
I gotta
all my
put
His
a
other
little-
Kurosawa's dreams is what
Yes,
you mean. His
that's what I'm
capital D
saying.
dreams.
Like
right,
this is
yeah.
the dreams movie. But
Right.
at 45, he did his show where he was like, here's every other idea I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. But luckily it was bound together by a great genre mystery engine so that it feels like something that, because he was still like, I wanted to do something that had all of my little ideas in it, but still sell it as an entertainment.
It was too disciplined a storyteller
Yeah.
to ever be self-indulgent.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like I think
This actually feels like the most self-indulgent, at least like visually and stylistically, and feels less beholden to, well, I got to make it a show.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's fun. Like, I do agree though that everybody should have one of those, especially once they've kind of like put in their time. Because like, what are you doing out here at age 70 trying to be like, I still know how to like do a plot. Like everybody knows you're good for it. Like
Yeah.
we just want to see the inside of your mind at that
this
point.
is my fucking Killers of the Flower Moon argument where
Yeah.
anyone who's like, Marty could have used a pair of scissors. I'm like, he's
Shut
given
up.
us everything. He
Yeah.
can do whatever he
Anyone
wants.
complaining
He
about
can tell
his
that story
films,
any way he wants to.
Yeah.
I really am like what on earth that whatever. I mean, the
I don't
movie's
even
good.
love that movie,
I
but
do love
it's
that
the
movie.
length of it is not the reason I don't like it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed sitting there in that theater for all 4 hours and was happy to be
3.5
there. Like
hours.
3, whatever.
I just I do
With trailers.
not in a
Well, I didn't see
supernatural.
trailers.
I saw without trailers as well. In a not in a supernatural way, there is that thing that's a little bit eerie about him just like being like, I got to get all of this out of my system before I turn 50.
Yeah.
Paprika. The film
Paprika.
is called Paprika. I
Yeah.
feel like when I have been telling people we are doing this director,
Yeah.
and they are not like, gigantic movie nerds, they're sort of like, oh, who's that? And I'm like, oh, he made this film, he made this film, he made
Yeah.
this film, he made a movie called Paprika. And they're like, oh, I remember Paprika.
Yeah.
This is maybe the movie that crossed over the most, at least initially.
I mean, it got a theatrical release, which is when I saw it for the
Emily,
first time.
they all got theatrical
releases.
They,
Like-
in America, yes.
Year
mostly from
of?
Sony, yes. Usually, Millennium Actress was delayed by a couple of years.
Tokyo Godfather
Godfather's
was
year
weirdly year of. So Millennium Actress and Tokyo Godfather came out a month apart.
Yes.
Right.
And then
I
this-
remember that.
This
which was
came
bad.
out, 6 months after it
Right.
came
This
out in
this
Japan.
got a summer 07
Mhm.
release. It was duking it out at the box office against Shrek the Third.
Oh my God.
Well, it's not going to hit the
Okay,
box
I'm sorry.
office.
I'm sorry.
Look.
I'm sorry.
Jesus.
I mean,
fucking
it
hell.
had the most. It
I mean, he
had
just got number 2 if you want to give him a
Okay.
ding. Yeah.
Yeah, give me a quick ding. It had the biggest gross of any of his films stateside, but
Sure.
still made
No.
under $1 million.
yeah.
But it crossed over, I feel like, a little more. The fact that this was Sony and they kind of kept it in circulation on streaming and
Yeah.
on video.
Right, and then it was remade better by Christopher Nolan, so that helped its
We'll talk
reputation.
about this.
Anyway,
Oh
look,
my
let's.
God,
I'm
don't.
joking. That was a joke. Every part of the
We're all
statement was a
joking
joke.
here. We're all joking and
Um,
laughing here.
I'm going to open the dossier.
Fun.
I want to open it.
2024,
Can I
year
open
of
it?
funny dreams.
Dreams with jokes in them.
Hard joke dreams. Yes, open the dossier, David.
I'm just going to open up radioclub.jp.
Okay.
My favorite
and go
website.
sit down with my
and
friends.
my favorite bar.
Yes. We'll talk about that later, of course. From January 1991 to June 1993, the Japanese edition of Marie Claire published 4 installments of an avant-garde novelist's latest work. Yasutaka
Tsutsui.
Sui.
Tsutsui, yeah.
Tsutsui,
Mm-hmm.
his science fiction story, Paprika.
Mhm.
I love it was Marie Claire. I didn't know that.
Isn't that funny? That's why I just wanted to, it's so funny. This was serialized in Marie Claire. It was very popular.
It was like
He
the,
did
the
not know-
bonfire of the vanities of Japan.
He did not know if it was going to go over well.
Okay.
But it was a huge hit, and he considered it to be his defining novel, the summation of my career in terms of both entertainment and psychoanalysis, he said.
Okay.
So lots of people wanted to make it into a movie. There was a manga released in 95, produced in 95, but
Doesn't
not
come
released
out. Yeah, until
03. I have never seen what that looks like. I don't know if you have, Emily.
I
live
think that's
action
a
version.
more literal adaptation.
Sure.
Yeah.
A live action version was in pre-production, but was shut down due to budget concerns.
Mhm.
But Satoshi Kon always wanted to make it.
Yes.
After he releases Perfect Blue, he's like, well, that story was a huge influence on me.
Yeah.
I read a lot of that guy's books when I was in my early 20s. So Rex Entertainment, the company that had given him money for Perfect Blue, goes under, and Kon had been trying to get them to get the rights or whatever, but when they go under, it kind of goes away, and so he goes off and he makes many other things. He makes Millennium Actress, he makes Tokyo Godfathers, he makes Paranoia Agent.
And the thing with Satoshi Kon, which we've talked about already before, but is particularly unusual for animation, is he is a guy who kept his budgets small enough.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like every time he had a film that exceeded expectations a little bit, he'd let it grow by like 10%.
I think so, yeah.
So the return on his movies was always solid enough that he could get another movie off the ground
Right.
quickly.
Yeah.
In 2003, he's promoting a Paranoia Agent. An animation magazine asks him to have a conversation with Tsutsui. Kon says this meeting was fated, F-A-T-E-D. Like
They were, you mean they were totally faded?
yeah,
Like,
and they were totally
Yeah,
faded.
they were zonked.
And he's like, hey, I saw Millennium Actress. I love those dream sequences. You could totally do a Paprika. Like he's very encouraging of this. And that kind of sets the ball rolling. And Kon's like, fine, I'm going to start working on it right now. They start developing it while he's still in production on Paranoia Agent. And let's see. Right. Perfect Blue, Kon had also adapted a novel, but was like, I never really read it. But Paprika, he's like, this is a huge influence on
Perfect
me.
Blue is kind of like a Colonel Blimp adaptation.
Right. You love to call things a Colonel Blimp
Because
adaptation.
it's the weirdest thing ever. I mean, that's the most extreme example of what I'm talking about. But yes, this was a true adaptation, but he also did do a lot of work to transform it away from the book.
Now, Emily, you've read at least most of this book.
I read about half of it.
You cracked it open for
I
the
was
pod.
trying to finish it in time for the pod, and I didn't get through it. But I mean, the thing that sort of mostly surprised me about it was how I guess if we don't want to get into it, we don't have to get into it, but how much, people love the accusation against Nolan for Inception, lifting a lot from
We do
Paprika
have to
the
talk
film.
about
We'll
it.
definitely talk about it.
I was sort of stunned at how much more it seemed like he had lifted from the novel itself. Just in terms of what the plot is. Like, the plot is more concerned with kind of a corporate espionage type thing. It's less about trying to plant an idea in somebody's head, at least as far as I've gotten, and it's more about like trying to protect somebody. It's more the like somebody's kind of under fire for his company because he's got some ideas. He's got some dangerous ideas. And that sort of is what's in place of the Konakawa story, the detective story. But I don't know. I'm into it so far. I gotta finish it. But it definitely is not hitting the film themes as much as the film is, obviously. But it still has a lot, like there are sequences, the whole like Konakawa, like how he goes through all the different genres of the film and everything. That's very much intact, and that's lifted straight from the book. Yeah, but you definitely see how Kon puts his own, like prioritizes his own interests, which at this point we really know what they are. Like we know what he's interested in. And so seeing those overlaid onto the very like sturdy genre structure of the novel is really fun. Like he's kind of pirouetting all over the kind of more procedural structure of the book.
It's my favorite kind of adaptation, which is a person makes a work about what the original work kind of means to them.
Yeah. Same. Yeah, that's how it, yeah, if you're gonna do it, why do a 1-to-1? Like show us how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
Which I think this is just like a masterclass of that.
The parade, Kon says, is his biggest invention.
Yeah.
Where he came up with that essentially is his like desire to try and represent what the book is doing with something like, entirely visual.
Yeah, it's also like an
overflowing reality.
It's kind of also an act of economy, I think, on his part, because there's not one big shared sort of dream, hallucination, fantasy thing, and it's kind of all different and disparate for different people. It's more also supposed to be like a contagious sort of schizophrenia that's infecting everybody. And so that's not really, we don't really see the inside of that. So I think it just helped to visually convey, okay, this is what the madness is, and less assign like an actual diagnosis to it, but just to be like, this is what everybody is sort of
racing compulsive thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also, I mean, it's the thing that's always hard about like, well, we'll talk about this, but like, film is a very dreamlike medium. There's a reason people have made great movies about dreams, although a lot of terrible movies about dreams have been made, but the good ones feel kind of transcendent.
What's a really bad one, though? That's actually a good question. Do you not want to say? You guys don't
I
want
don't
to say.
think you'd like it if I said it.
Don't just say Inception. Let's say something else.
Sorry, I don't have another answer.
No, but come on. For leaving, I'm serious. Like, what are some other movies about dreams that really miss the mark?
I was not.
What dreams may come.
Sure.
That's technically a heaven movie or afterlife movie.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm talking about like movies where it's like, let's do it. We're gonna like set a movie in the dream world.
I am not a big fan of dream scenario. I do think it gets the dreams,
the dreams were
right.
kind of fun in
That's sort of the successful.
You kind of
wanted
more of those.
Yeah.
I mostly like dream movies.
Yeah,
like
I
like Nightmare on Elm Street
Mhm.
as a universe.
Mhm.
I like Waking Life.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a dreamy movie. You know what I've never seen in dreams? The serial killer movie from the 90s.
Oh, I've never seen that either.
The Cell, I
Sure.
am like a defender of. Like that was not well received at the time.
Do we count Eternal Sunshine as a dream movie?
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Anything where you're like in the someone's like brain space, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that I know that's more about like memories.
That's more, because
whatever.
I wouldn't even think of The Cell as being a dream movie necessarily.
It's like
it's
you're
more like
in
the
a
subconscious,
right?
Yeah,
But still, anything where it's like someone's putting on a rig and is like, I'm going in his brain, right? That's a robust subgenre.
I'm on Dream Movies Wikipedia, Waking Life.
Yeah, I said Waking Life.
Vanilla Sky. I'm sorry.
Vanilla Sky.
Vanilla
Thank
Thank you
you.
for correcting me.
Yeah, Vanilla Sky
Forgot about
counts.
The
Man.
best dream movie of all time, Last Night in Soho, obviously the great dream
Oh my
movie.
God.
I guess that's dreams. Is that what's going on in that one? I
Yeah, when
already
she
kind of forgot.
sleeps, she is the other.
She's Anya
lady.
Taylor-Joy.
What about
Yes.
the I think short-lived NBC series Awake?
There was Awake. That's
Right.
true. There was a Dream On
Yes.
HBO.
Oh.
That had dreams, I think.
Damn, so really,
Anyway,
it is
look,
it kind of is
it's a rich and fulfilling genre.
stinker-filled genre. I gotta say.
Weird. Several David Lynch films included on this.
Wait,
page.
what?
Huh.
Yeah.
No, that guy's firmly
I'm
planted on
gonna
the ground.
submit
2
some
feet.
edits.
The
Yeah.
BFG?
Well, he makes dreams.
He
I don't know if you
does
remember
make
this.
them
He
in
is
bottles.
a dream worker.
Can I tell you? I don't remember.
He takes some fuzzy wumples.
Okay, well, do you remember just like feeling like really high energy watching a movie, just like, electricity course? That was probably you were watching Steven Spielberg's The BFG.
Yep.
One of the most energetic movies
Yeah.
ever made.
It was sort of like a manic episode.
Okay. The bartenders are played by Kon
Yes.
and Tsutsui, right?
Yes.
I don't think I knew that.
Yes.
I just found
That's
out.
cool.
Apart from that, he wasn't really involved. He was like, you do,
Mhm.
you do whatever you want to do.
Make your version.
Cohen's kind of shaking up his style a little bit, right? He had been working, I feel like, in more like his characters are more realistic.
Sure.
His character's a little more exaggerated,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, some of the characters are far more kind of caricatured.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he's messing with that. He gives these very, very, very long quotes, which I'm not mad at JJ about at all. But I am not going to just like
Can we
read
do a
aloud
quick
for
it's fine
20
check to
minutes.
see how you really feel?
It's fine.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No, it's fine.
It's fine.
Anyway, but I feel like the most important thing is when this movie comes out, he's like almost famous in Japan, right?
Sure.
Like he's gone from niche or cult status to like kind of like major. He's approaching like major artiste status,
Mhm.
Which is pretty cool. But then of course it's very sad that this is his final movie. He's never done drugs. Wow.
Okay.
They all say that.
This raises the obvious question, JJ says, and I think he's right. Well, then what the hell was he smoking, and can I get some? Wait a second.
JJ, I have an answer for you. What he was smoking is you're fired.
You're fired. You're fired, cigarettes.
You're fired, France cigarettes.
To be clear, JJ wrote that joke in.
Yeah, it was funny. Look, all right, Paprika. Let's just talk about Paprika.
Let's
I can't
talk
look at
about
this dossier
Paprika.
anymore.
Sure.
What's important is he just sat down and he was like, I think I'm going to make an absolute fucking solid gold banger. And then he did. And he was
Yeah.
like, bang, here it is. And everyone saw it and was like, that's what happened.
Well, you talking
You
about
didn't like that?
No, I loved it. It was great.
And
it was
podcast.
fine. It's fine. You talking about like him imposing these ideas on top of like a very sturdy genre structure.
Yeah.
There's this extended quote in here that I will paraphrase.
Thank you for saying it's extended.
Yep. Where he talks about his Cohn's direct term that he used was hoodlum emulation,
Cool.
where he basically said that like a thing he had a distaste for in animation was people just kind of showing off all their tricks, and that you very often saw someone learn something and now they just want to show you the technical skill or the creativity or how crazy their design was, or they were inspired by something else, or their craft grew to a point where there was a new thing they could do. And he was always like, that's sort of the hoodlum side of my brain. And then there is the other character, the Satoshi Kon is the sort of like enforcer who forces the hoodlum Kon to like put his wildest instincts in a structure.
Mhm.
So talking about Paprika being the thing he wanted to make for like 10 years, I think he had some feeling, and even though obviously what was stopping him from really making the movie up until this point were the rights, budget level, feeling of ability to be able to execute it, all that sort of stuff. There was also the thing, I think, for him of like, I want to know I am at a point where I'm not just doing this as an excuse to just go on flights of fancy and be able to animate anything
Yeah.
Sure.
and impress people.
Which I think is something that people often oversimplified this movie, especially as being as just like,
It's
man,
crazy.
it's so fucking trippy, man. Like I think on the Apple Store description, it's like, this is your brain on anime. And
Yes.
it's like,
Oh dear.
there's a reason behind, like, he is actually the most meticulous. Like, I would say that, like, there are many other animation directors who are much more just like, here's the inside of my brain, doesn't necessarily have to do with any plot or anything. I think he's much more rigorous about what
he is.
does.
But I think this movie is not a tough watch on first, but like it's quite
It's
overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I find it more rewarding every time I watch it. The first time I watched it, I was like so hyped. And then I kind of exited being like, I don't really know what like happened there.
Yeah.
And not in that way of like, whoa.
Right.
Like, it's just like, fucking vibing with images. I was just like, I feel like, like because it's kind of a tight plot.
Yes.
Like if you pay attention, but it's kind of easy to get distracted.
Well, and it gets quite abstract at the end, which I wish I would have gotten to the end of the novel to know how the ending works on the page, because it really becomes, I think, something so symbolic and, yes, dreamlike at the end as far as the resolution to the problem.
I imagine it was fairly different, because the one thing I saw in the dossier is that he spent a long time storyboarding the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And he did very detailed, meticulous storyboards before he started animation.
He's one of these guys who does that himself, which is, again, one of these things that
he spent
leads to a short life.
months.
Year and a half just storyboarding by himself. Then like being
doing
like,
all the key too.
this has to be airtight for me before I can start animation. But he started without an ending. He was like, I think I will find the ending as I go along.
Yeah, that tracks.
That makes me think the ending has to be veering off from something else.
Yeah.
The hoodlum thing, if I can just read his direct quote here.
Emulation, yes.
It's similar to the relationship of Atsuko and Paprika, so I think I could identify with those characters more easily. Subsequently, I could relate to the film better. This time around, I wanted to go with my hoodlum instincts.
Yeah.
So he was like trying to unleash this part of him that he had always been like, that's unseemly.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And he said, if it doesn't work, it's the hoodlum's fault, but Satoshi Kon is there for equilibrium. He'll say, hold up, or just go with it, depending on the situation. It's like the gas pedal and the brake pedal you have on a car. So a real Thomas Middleditch situation. But
wait a second. Wait a second, what?
15 people are going to like that joke.
Fine.
But yes, it's like, it's fascinating that he's like, this is my like Flight of Fancy movie where I can just like go off. But also, this other version of me is there as like a parole officer, trying to keep things on rails.
Well, it's funny. I mean, this is why I say that Millennium Actress feels like a warm-up for this, because you have that almost like literally represented in Millennium Actress with the reporter or the documentarians sort of interjecting into this very dreamlike memory almost, and them coming in and meddling with it, or being like, is this what really happened?
Imposing logic, explaining.
Yeah. Which it does feel like that is just how he thinks of things. It's like, and I identify with that a lot as a writer, like especially when you are not a novelist necessarily, when you are doing something that has to be like turned in and functional. There's a part of you that's always checking yourself, and it is this dichotomy of like, how much do you let one live over the other? And it totally makes sense that that's how he thinks. Like, he identifies with Paprika and Atsuko in this story, and like how one has to like coexist with the other.
There's just such a major component of film writing that is engineering. Even if you're trying to do something that veers more towards non-narrative, save for doing a pure like installation piece, right? Even if you're doing a non-narrative thing, there's some level of engineering where it's like, well, no, I'm writing this with the specific intent of this being a document that can be translated.
It's direction.
To a process and a medium that then needs to have some kind of emotional or intellectual effect on people relative to the amount of time they're investing into it.
Yeah. And you're always happy about the things that actually make it through, that aren't in service of that function, the things that feel personal and like, that could be called a flight of fancy.
Right.
The things that make it through that process are the things that elevate it. But, it's all kind of in service of this engine. And just fighting to get some of your own little personal stuff in there is a big part of it.
And then here's a movie where you have a lead character who is like a scientific mind in a corporate structure.
Sure.
Who is also then going into dreams and fucking with shit.
Being awesome.
Trying to like,
Yeah. And being this like fantasy object.
Yes.
like allowing her identity to become super malleable and, you know, not bound to her responsibilities necessarily. But
what spice would you name yourself after in the dream world?
this is a great question.
Garlic salt.
I was gonna say that's my answer as well. Now I feel like a fucking hack.
Couple of garlic salt boys here.
Like everything bagel seasoning. Does that count? Like a shaker of. That is, you have to admit, that's not just me being funny. That's probably the most spot on description of my energy.
Oh, you're just an everything bagel over there.
Yeah,
I'm just a
the
shaker
seeds.
of MSG.
Oh yeah,
That's good.
That's great.
What would you be, David?
I don't know. Sage.
I mean,
I'm so wise.
We use the term you coined.
Like
That
that.
sucks. That sucks so
That's
much.
an herb, not a spice.
Yeah.
Well, now
everything
if you
about
grind
it's
it up,
bad.
it's on my spice rack, baby. I got ground up sage. What's up?
You coined the term years ago. Too much paprika on the sandwich.
Yes, I did.
Mhm.
We're covering a movie called Paprika for the first time.
I'm trying to remember. Was it Bridge of Spies? No, I think I had it for some. No, it's right. It's for Split, because in Split, James McAvoy is making sandwiches and he puts a lot of paprika on them, which is, you know, a bit insane of him because he's, you know,
What kind of
he's
sandwich?
the Beast or whatever. I can't remember.
There's literally a paprika sandwich in
I
that.
think that's where that came from, right? Yes, there's a paprika scene.
Paprika originated from discussion of the
Yes.
sandwich making scene.
It's
in the
when-
film
it's
Split.
when
Wow.
James
and then you
McAvoy's in
reapplied
the-
it to other things.
Remember when he's in the kindly old
No, I
lady
remember.
vibe,
Yeah.
and he's like, "I made you a sandwich with the paprika on it," and you're like, "Wow, this movie's great," you know. And then I said that in either Lincoln or Bridge of Spies or some movie,
Sure.
Spielberg put the appropriate amount of paprika on it and then put it back in the rack.
Right. Back in the rack,
Back
I
in the
remember
rack.
vividly. I just think it's fascinating that that's the term we've created for like overindulgence.
Right, which is funny because
seasoning. And then this is a movie that is like so judicious in the amount of paprika it's using.
It's literally in
It
the
is.
final lines of the film, like just a little paprika
Yeah.
to balance it all out.
I keep my paprika in the fridge to keep it red. It's something I do.
What? What happens if you
It kind of loses its color
It
after a while.
oxidizes?
Yeah. If you keep it in the fridge, it stays really red, which is nice.
Well, seems like this paprika's been kept in the fridge.
Good call. This movie is beautiful and
Her-
colorful.
Yes.
Her shirt is red
And her hair.
and her hair.
Her hair's kind of browny red,
Yeah.
kind of orange.
Auburn.
The
Rust?
the red shirt and the jeans is also a direct lift from the book. That's what that's the
And her
paprika
car,
costume.
you said?
Her car is the
car
same.
is
Yeah, yeah.
Paprika
appropriate.
mobile.
Yeah.
It's a big pepper on wheels.
a
That'd be
chili
fun.
relleno.
Yeah, that'd be fun. You remember when in Blue's Clues, Salt and Pepper had a baby and it was called Paprika?
Of course.
Yep, pretty cool.
Wow.
Didn't make any sense, but
Where is she now? I would not believe what she
Uh-oh.
looks like
Oh,
today.
I just
God,
Googled
no.
Paprika and it auto-completed January 6th.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Doesn't that feel like a Zergnet prompt of like, you won't believe what baby paprika looks
I don't like
today.
this.
Thanks for
Can we-
shouting out Zergnet.
Thank you.
Paprika is set in the near future where
Yes.
a newly created device called the DC Mini.
Mhm.
What does that stand for, DC?
It's
Dreamcatcher?
two. So there are two devices in the book, and one's called the Daedalus, and I can't remember what the other one is, but it's sort of a combination of the two of them. There's also something called a Gorgon in the book.
So a lot of Greek myth here.
Yeah, that's like the wireless technology. So basically, the DC Mini is a combination of all these different existing dream things they have that has basically been on the black market illegally at the point of the book, combined into one thing that lets people be in other people's
They've
dreams.
basically
Right.
gone from a computer the size of a room to an iPhone that now can do too many things. And
wirelessly.
Right.
And part of this, it's mentioned, it's very techie, blah, blah, blah in the movie,
Sure.
and it doesn't really matter.
No, it
but
doesn't
like, the idea of the anaphylaxis, which I barely get, is like basically the more that this bond is formed between a person and the technology, the stronger it gets, which is sort of why Atsuko is the most susceptible to being fucked with, because she's been using it the most.
Right. And why she basically is in dreams even without control in a way. Right.
She
Like
doesn't
her
need to be
avatar is just
wearing it.
there.
Yeah.
I believe there are a couple things in this movie that feel like they might have very specifically influenced Nolan, right? Without having read the book, just reading through stuff, I sort of was leaning in the same direction you're leaning, Emily, which is like, it feels more likely that he read the book at some point and that might have planted ideas in his head. Perhaps inceptioned ideas in his head, but in a way that feels like
the whole thing with Nolan in this is he's never acknowledged it
ever.
And so it's like, if he did get inspired by this book or movie, it would be nice for him to acknowledge it, but he never has.
He's a coward.
And he's always said,
coward.
Well, some people would just say things like he's a coward on our podcast. I wouldn't, because he might not have been inspired by this book.
Emily called him baby and a fraud.
Yeah, I really want people to get mad at me. So
well,
please
they're going to
log on to blankies.reddit.com for some
for real
angry
shit. Real angsty angry shit. But the other thing is, he's always said that Inception is like is something he wrote as a teenager,
which
essentially.
I very much believe.
I adore Inception. I think it's a very fun movie, but
it feels
tracks.
like something that a teenager
yes,
wrote.
and then built upon.
Right. The difference between our opinions of Inception is that David and I like that aspect of it, that it feels like a dumb thing a 15-year-old made up, reapplied with adult logic.
That's what I love about it. It's like the thinking of a teenager and in the hands of a guy who can run a
it's
gigantic
so hard
scale.
For me to imagine Inception being made in the backyard on somebody's camcorder.
Totally.
Like
That's
everybody
what I like
wearing suits and like being
Two
really
thieves.
serious, screwed up guys.
We're in the dream.
Honestly, it's the guns that really lose me pretty early on in Inception. I'm just like, why is it guns?
Tight
like, it
vests.
could be literally anything, and you guys are in suits wearing guns like it's fucking Reservoir Dogs.
This is not to relitigate Inception, but what I find fascinating about that movie is like, that is a movie about dreams made by one of the most literal-minded.
Okay, we don't need to. We're not doing Inception.
This is my
No, I think it's actually kind of important.
I do too.
I know that you don't want to
we
invite
just
it, but
already
it's
did
such
that.
I don't know, what, like 10 years
Yeah,
ago?
whenever it
Many
was.
years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think
it's
it's
a
a
podcast
cloud.
within a podcast.
Not that old yet.
And if anything, I want to talk about it because I do think that it overshadows this film in some ways that I don't enjoy, and I'd like to try to dispel it or at least analyze that a little bit, because they do sort of, for Western audiences, they are pretty inseparable.
Well, this was the point I was trying to make, is that
inseparable.
I believe he had this idea when he was 15. I believe that's the core of the idea. There are little things in this movie, some of them maybe originate in this film, some of them originate in the book, where I'm like, that feels like that might have pinned in his brain on top of the idea he already had, and then he took it in a different direction.
Yeah, sure.
But one of them is that notion of the more time you spend in here, the more caught you get.
Yeah.
Which obviously in that movie is done through the Marion Cotillard character.
Yeah.
In a
and
very
the dreams
different
are the
ends.
dreams thing. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, I ultimately think that the films are about two very different things, which is why I don't think the ripoff thing is exactly clean.
No.
And yes, people pick up imagery. I think there is some imagery that's so direct that I'm just a little.
hallway.
It's the hallway.
The hallway, sort of, yes. I get there's one image. They don't really do a combat thing in the hallway in Paprika, but more some of the stuff with the shattering
I
of
was
the
going to
glass.
say, that's basically mirrored directly with Elliot Page and
Yeah.
Inception.
And all of
there's
just
no
the-
movies that have mirror imagery in them.
Also the general feeling, whether or not it's a direct imagery or not, but the thing of people being hooked up to these things, waking up in a new world, that general kind of almost cathartic feeling.
Yeah.
And that break from
kinda-
these very exciting moments is that's the feeling that they share.
The headband kind of thing.
Sure.
Which is funny because people ask Kon, did you rip the headband off from Existence?
Yeah.
Because it looks the same.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was like, no, I've never seen that. The headband's inspired by a plant I like.
And it's jankier too, but it does remind me a little bit more of Eternal Sunshine, where it's the same thing of lying in the bed and someone sort of
on your
watching
brain.
over you.
Yeah, right.
But I in this way, talking about our favorite adaptations are ones that tell you about the filmmaker and their relationship to the work and whatever. There's something very telling about Paprika is a movie about an animator with an animator's innate sense of abstract creativity that he is trying to impose order and meaning on, that he is trying to self-police, versus Inception being one of the most literal-minded men alive, being what's the wildest thing I can think of?
I don't
A
think...
well-dressed man with a gun walking upside down.
I don't think...
Love Inception. I think it's a masterpiece, but I'm saying that's what's interesting about the two
It is
films.
so true,
It's what
though.
makes them very different.
Yeah. So the main difference to me is that Inception is a movie about a partnership
Yes,
And
it's about a
addiction.
project. It's
Right.
about like making a movie,
Yeah,
right?
It's addiction to whatever. It could be a drug thing. It could be
Yes.
a creative process and like being stuck in a world with somebody. At any rate, it is about what happens to two people when they are like together too long,
Right.
making too deep a connection to get together,
making too many skyscrapers,
making
Right.
too many childhood homes in the
Right.
And the classic Nolan thing
electric
of,
building downtown.
if my wife left me, I'd be a fucking mess.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Paprika is about something much bigger and
Yes.
cosmic, which I think ultimately makes it more ambitious to me, and it also makes like exactly the animator sensibility is really what wins out here.
Yeah.
Because there is a way you can yada some of the technicalities of your science fiction premise that you don't have like JGL standing at the end of a stair. I just watched this, by the way. I hadn't watched it in a while. Like standing at the edge of a
tried to
staircase
stop her.
being like,
Oh boy.
paradox. Like I just like that shit is where
I don't think that's how he
loses.
said
just-
it, by the way. I think he
Is
paradox.
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 But it's just that to me is like him. It's the Prestige or whatever, which is a movie of his that I like a lot. But it's just like kind of trying. It gets stuck in the literalness when it could be in the clouds a little more. There's a version of that movie that's still about the same stuff. It's still about
Right.
Marion Cotillard that allows itself to have a little more exist with its feet a little bit off the ground.
See,
a little more.
for me, all of that is feature, not a bug, because
Yeah,
it's so
sure.
telling of
That's
who
what
he
he's
is, and I
like.
find it
He made
fascinating.
that
I know,
movie.
and that's
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not asking him to make a different movie, but
Right.
that's where that movie trips up for me.
Sure.
That's where I
Good movie.
get out of it a little bit. I think there's a lot of cool stuff in that movie. I'm not saying I like outwardly.
There's
I like
some
to troll you
incredible
guys.
ideas in that movie,
I'm a
like a loaded
troll.
die.
You're a
that
bit of a
only
troll,
one person
Emily.
knows the precise weight.
I don't want anybody to be like, oh my god, Emily hates Inception, hates everything Nolan made. I will always readily admit when Nolan impresses me and I think he's done a good job. That movie is like kind of embarrassing to me, but I love a lot of his other movies. Like
You were like veering back onto the main road clean, and then you throw in the side swipe of embarrassing.
That's so good. That's
But-
so good.
But I mean, he's whatever. He is ambitious and it's cool. And I always tell the story about how I was downtown when they were filming the car chase scenes in downtown LA
For what?
and-
For Inception?
for Inception.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were doing the Milky Rain
Mm.
down there and it ruined a pair of my shoes. So I'll always have that with him.
Vendetta reveal.
Yep, there
it's
we go.
all because of your shoes.
Didn't
Because of
even
my
fucking
shoes.
apologize during his
whoa,
Oscar
wait,
speech.
What kind of shoes were they?
They were like some canvas slip-on shoes that I shouldn't have been wearing.
Kinda
Like
cool.
Well, okay.
Nolan dumped water all over them.
my $10 shoes.
Another example. The thing about Paprika and is that it's a great movie. This is my thing. Like, why must it exist in any shadow, right? We don't
Yeah,
need
well,
it to.
that's
Right,
why I
right.
wanted to have this conversation because I don't think it should exist in any
But
shadow.
I think every time this movie gets brought up, and you're right, in the West, people
Yes.
immediately are like, well, Inception. And I'm like, you don't need to worry about that. Paprika's doing great.
I think it doesn't help the legacy of either movie to
Right, to
constantly
keep
frame
tying
I
them.
it
agree.
together. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, you know,
But
that's...
it did have to be discussed. Now we
No,
can
I
talk
think
about
it has
the
to be
Paprika as a
discussed.
tennis thing.
discussed. It's mostly the
can't
hallway
not-
thing. People really trip
We're
over
not
it.
going to single-handedly dispel this connection here
No.
on
No,
Blank Check.
I
the
mean, Nolan would have
podcast.
to. I have no idea if he's ever even really talked about it.
No, he
this is
doesn't.
all like internet chatter
It
of
all
like,
is.
why won't he mention this?
Yeah.
And I feel like he's never even said like, oh, I don't know what that is, or oh, I'm not entirely sure about that.
No,
to be
and
fair.
like, despite him not being a fucking poster, it's not like he's a guy who isn't
doesn't have a phone.
talking often. Wait a second. I haven't heard of this.
He doesn't. I don't know if you guys know
What are
about
you
this. He doesn't have a
talking
phone.
about?
He's
that's
a cool
impossible.
guy.
He can't post.
It's
He
so
doesn't have
good
a
that he
phone.
doesn't have a
Yeah,
phone.
rules. It's
What
the
a
best
god.
thing
No, it's cool.
What a
That's one of
god
that is
king.
one of the best things about
Yes.
him. I love
Yeah.
that.
The big difference in this movie versus something like Inception is about like building worlds, right, and like these people who that's their job, they're builders, right. In Paprika, it's like no, dreams are this like uncontrollable thing. Really.
They're more menacing.
Yeah, like they can get out of your grasp really quickly. They can mesh into other people's dreams, and then
Well-
eventually maybe start bleeding into the real world. Like it's much more like hazy how it all works.
Well, it's also just the danger, like the kind of dialogue going on is the potential danger of them being messed with too much, of letting dreams be
Yes.
dreams, of letting your personal private world become external.
Well, the emotional core of this movie is a guy who's racked with regret over not pursuing
a film career.
Yeah, but like an artistic partnership, right? A relationship that was based on a shared sense of creativity. That he left, the guy died, which is also kind of eerie within the Kon.
Right. Ironically, even more tragic to consider that. Yeah.
Right. And then he entered a world literally controlled by rules and law. Like he became a fucking cop.
A cop.
Yes. And it's just like, should I have continued making movies in my backyard?
Yeah.
Which is like, once again, this like internal Kon, like, not that I think he questions whether or not he should have pursued a career in the arts, but it's like, well, this is another split of his psyche. There's like the part of
the
him,
manager and the dreamer or whatever. Yeah, totally.
And the two paths one could go down.
Right. And the artist is dead in this movie.
Who's the guy in the who's putting him in the cage? Is that supposed to be his old friend, or is that just kind of like
that's a good question?
His subconscious. I love that it's not really answered.
Yeah.
Unless it is answered, in which case I noticed that and I'm not telling you guys
if
that.
We know
to seem down to
if
earth.
It's answered, we all know the answer.
Because like the first thing in Paprika is we're in this guy's recurring dream where he's like in the audience of a circus.
Yes.
And then suddenly he's in the cage in the middle of the circus.
Everyone in the audience has his face.
And is running towards him. Yeah. So it's a dream I have every night too.
It's a good movie dream.
Yeah. There's also this effect where you're suddenly in his point of view and like the camera's like panning around in this way that is like so unusual for animation. It's very cool.
The notion that this almost got off the ground as a live action film a couple years earlier before they finally decided like, is this just prohibitive to do in live action?
You could do it, but it would be expensive.
They were, I think, filing it more as like the effects might not be there or they're too expensive or whatever. I do think there's something just to, and there are many dream movies I like, but you always struggle with this where it's like, how do you visually represent a dream without stylizing it too much? Because in your dreams, your reality is very slippery, but it does feel real to you when you're in it. There's not this distinction. You can get caught up in actually thinking it's really happening. In animation, there's just a clean line of like, the dreams can look exactly the same as
which is
reality because you don't have to put fucking filters on your lenses or like change the color palette to delineate. You're still the same people drawn in the same way. And when they start evolving and abstracting their forms, it's like it's not a CGI
you don't
layer
trip
on
over
top
it.
of
Right.
Yeah,
Totally.
it's just all seamless.
Yes.
Like I think about like when I was watching Inception, like there's just a moment where they're in I forget which setting they're in, but somebody's sitting on a bed that has a pink knitted blanket on it. And I'm just like, one of the great things about Paprika is you don't have to fill in that that's like a pink knitted blanket and think about it being a construct within the dream. That things can be as defined or hazy as you want them to be, and you'll never really have your attention drawn to it. You'll just sort of be aware of it while
That's
you're watching
the other.
it.
Kon is at this point just like fucking king of transitions, king of like slipping in and out of realities.
Yeah, the whole, I mean, we should talk about the opening credits, which is just one of my favorite
love those credits.
Sequences.
We were shouting out the credits.
I love it so much.
We watched the movie together.
Yeah, we watched it.
I
watched it
Emily is
2
stealing
times,
with me.
But yeah,
stealing with me.
Stealing.
You come to my house, you
get
stale right up.
Get real crusty.
I brought a fresh loaf of bread to David's house as a homewarming gift. Immediately,
Came a
mold.
raisin.
Murder weapon.
But Paprika starts on. It starts with no, does it start on it? No, it ends with Atsuko, but like it kind of follows Paprika. She's sort of inhabiting all these different, advertisements, like hopping on a guy's t-shirt, like sort of making her way through the city in this very, fluid way, this very unbound way. And I love the music of this. Like
Music's
I love
very
the
good.
Susuma Hirasawa score is like going off. And it's, I don't know, it to me, I remember when I was on this podcast talking about when I was on the Miyazaki
Castle in the Sky.
When I was on Castle in the Sky and I was talking about in Kingdom of Dreams and Madness when Miyazaki's talking about like, in animation you can like do like he's looking out at out at Tokyo being like, if I'm in animation I can hop from this roof to the next. I can run up it, and they kind of do this little montage of all of his characters running and dodging and going all over the place. And I feel like this like to me, that is sort of the summation of what animation is good at. And it's not just like, oh, you can do what's physically impossible. To me, it's like you can embody a feeling or a mindset that you just can't do.
Yes.
And
it's so true.
And you could never replicate the thrill of this sequence by just doing, like, even if you did everything 1-to-1 perfectly, there is something about the fact that it's animated, the fact that it feels so free, that is just like why I love it. And
if you literally had unlimited money all the time in the world, and we're handed Paprika, and we're like, make this live action as close as you can, it probably would kind of suck.
Do you also think, I mean, they nearly,
God bless,
it seemingly got killed by Inception.
Right, there was
Wolfgang Peterson was supposed to
there
do
was
a
that,
remake.
but then recently there was
Kathy
this
Yan.
Kathy Yan, series, but that seems to have
for Amazon,
fizzled.
but
that
that
was
seems
just
to
like
be
as of 2 years ago, so I don't know what
that might still be.
there.
I mean, who knows?
Well,
Amazon's a great
about,
company that's
right,
never done
the thing
anything
about
wrong.
streaming television is that
Healthy.
onward and upward,
Right.
more and more.
Yeah.
But I think her adaptation was going to be more off the book.
Yeah.
Whereas Wolfgang might have done something closer to this.
Would he?
I don't fucking know. But
Come
what was?
on.
Wait, what was the
I
thing?
love the guy, but like, come on.
Yes.
I guess he did the Never-Ending Story. It's pretty dreamy.
Yeah, he's done
Very
some dreamy
dreamy.
shit.
But at that point, he was more in his like Poseidon era.
Well,
where he's-
Poseidon stars a couple dream boats, including the great ship itself, Poseidon.
Any others?
A boat of dreams.
Josh Lucas?
Richard Dreyfuss. Kurt.
Kurt's in that.
Yeah, it's got a weird cast. I mean, Rossum. What I was going to say is that I do think a thing that Kon and Miyazaki both get in spades is there is that unbridled freedom of animation, right? But like, if you go from that into a scene that feels like the type of scene that does not need to be animated,
Right.
a scene with like a sort of maturity, a delicacy, a realism.
Some people in lab coats talking in a room.
Right, walking.
Right.
Walking and talking.
There's something more jarring in the contrast there of like choosing your moments to fully ground. Because there's something disorienting almost of seeing like, I'm used to this being used for flight of fancy or entertainment. When animation slows down, and I think it's partly just because animation is so expensive that people don't usually want to take time to animate a character thinking.
Yeah.
We're used to everything being like so whiz bang that those guys put their chips down and go like, no, it's important to have a scene that's slowed.
Yes, although I do feel like anytime there's always just this risk that someone's going to start talking nonsense and throw themselves out a window or something in this movie.
No, but that's what's helpful.
Which is frightening and cool.
Right.
And,
I mean, even just from the opening dream sequence to the two of them looking at the laptop on the bed. And it suddenly feels like this weirdly sexual, intimate thing, right?
Yeah.
Where they're both in bathrobes.
They're waking up, right?
They're in a
both
fancy
in a hotel
hotel.
room.
In the book, it is so much more overtly like a sex work type thing.
Right.
I was going to say.
Because she's kind of doing this freelance, basically,
Yeah.
right? It's like, this machine exists.
Yes.
It's not regulated.
And she's wearing a wig. Like, it's like.
Right. So she's sort of going into people's dreams to kind of help them understand them.
She meets them in the Radio Club bar, which is a real bar in the book. She meets them there. It's like very much like a private men's club. She sits, has a drink with them. They go back to her room.
Yeah.
It's very, very sex work coded.
It has the energy of like high class escort in a 5-star hotel with a Fortune 500 CEO.
Yeah.
And there is the
that
weird
kind of thing
intimacy.
doesn't happen. Fortune 500
I'm
CEOs are very above board.
The intimacy of them sitting there in the bed next to each other and like looking at his subconscious.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's he's naked in
Right.
It's like they made a
psychically.
sex tape and then they're playing it back.
And this technology has been developed like when you go into the more structured world, not the DC Mini, but sort of what you're saying, all these larger technologies were created in theory as like breakthroughs in psychology, right?
In
Finally.
therapy. Yeah.
Yes, but this is being done in this weird, intimate way where it's like, what are you trying to get out of this? What are you trying to puzzle out? I think also talking about like why you couldn't do this in live action. I've been thinking about this a lot.
Okay.
And especially because it happens like a month apart from less than the last Indiana Jones movie coming out.
The Dial of Destiny?
The Dial of Destiny.
Wow.
But Christopher McQuarrie on one of the 18-hour Dead Reckoning episodes that
Mission
I
Impossible
talk
things,
about nonstop.
You do.
All the flashback stuff to young Tom Cruise, which I guess there's maybe more of in part 2, they asked him if he had thought about doing de-aging rather than that basically just keeps him in the shadows
You
over
have
the shoulder.
talked about this on this podcast multiple times.
Have I said this?
Yes. I'm sure you're about to say what you've already said.
Where he said we did a bunch of tests,
Yes.
and the result every time was the best it ever looked, and sometimes it looked perfect. I never stopped thinking that's a good effect.
Yes.
Right.
Where if you did this in live action, you'd be thinking nonstop.
That looks cool.
what
How
you
do they
said,
do that?
infinite money.
Right. Yeah.
Best execution possible. You'd be like,
Yeah.
holy shit, that looks wild.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than this, where it does feel like there's one continuous stream.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dial of Destiny, obviously the de-aging is seamless and the whole movie just like crackles from start to finish. What a
People are
wild
gonna
ride.
get angry at you for that.
Because they think I'm serious or because they
I don't
like the
know,
movie?
both directions.
Yeah, sure, both directions.
David only feels that way because the opening takes place in New York City.
Doesn't it take place in like Bavaria?
Not,
They're on a
not the
train or
very
whatever.
opening, I
Yeah.
guess. The college section.
No, I like the college section, right? Because it takes place in New York City. He probably goes to a bodega, which of course is
That is the one section I kind of like.
No, I actually think that movie's fine. Okay, I mean
really
it's not
like-
amazing. It's whatever.
I really liked that movie for that half second. I saw a billboard for it in LA and I thought it said the Durl of Destiny.
The Durl of Destiny. Ben, what did you want
Ben?
to say?
I love the gibberish dialogue.
Yes.
It's so poetic.
What?
And it
Going
just
on
like
there.
it doesn't make any sense, but there's stuff in there that
Well, you're paying attention to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just they're immediately going like blah blah blah. You're like, wait, what are they saying? You know,
Yeah.
did anyone listen to the dub? I didn't. I've never seen
I-
the dub of this movie.
I was flipping back
I
and
wondered
forth.
how the gibberish was in dub version.
I watched like 90% subs, 10% dubs.
Wow.
I kept on kind of switching because I do tend to. I'm dumb, but like process movies better on a first watch. I feel like anime specifically for
fine.
whatever reason. I thought the dub was really bad.
Yeah.
The
I can
performances were
imagine.
so bad that I couldn't stick with it. And I
Yeah.
don't think I got to any of the gibberish portions.
Sorry to the actors in the dub whose names I don't particularly recognize. Mostly like video gamey, you know, voiceover actors.
Yeah. I can't imagine it would be that good, honestly.
'Cause
I was
feel like-
surprised at how much I liked the Millennium Actress.
I think those were done a little later and maybe have a little more
Yes.
spin on them.
Since Tokyo
Tokyo
Godfathers,
Godfathers definitely was.
There have been
done
more
later.
recent American
Okay.
dubs that feel like I mean, I think part of it is just like
spit and polish.
yeah,
That's what I was trying to
anime
say.
is in a much different place in American culture now than
Yeah.
it was when this film came out. And
Yeah.
the American dub of this, which is still the one that was released in theaters in 2007,
Yeah.
feels like the actors were directed as if they were in Dragon Ball Z, which is no
Yeah.
disrespect to Dragon Ball Z, but it's like, well, anime is action.
Right.
It's very
Mhm,
high energy.
mhm.
Everyone yell all the time.
It's
sure.
very operatic. Yeah. The
Red-
performances all just felt a little too large.
The
Yeah.
gibberish is very cool. I don't speak Japanese. I would love to know what it is in Japanese. Like if it's being literally translated or it's some other kind of gibberish that has the similar
But it's
atmosphere,
I mean,
Emily.
to
As far as I can tell, it's pretty. Like I
like-
only know like nouns and stuff. I can recognize the phrasing of it. Is probably a little more lost on me. The actual poetry of it, but
Right.
it seems like they're talking about the same things for the most part.
Sure, okay.
So yeah,
to talk about a guy we're going to be talking about for many months, though, it's like the same sort of effect as Lynch
mm-hmm.
using like backwards speak, where you're like,
Mhm.
well, what's unsettling is that it sounds close to words that I should be able to process.
Yeah,
It's not just someone going like me,
Yeah.
you know?
He did consider that, obviously.
He did, obviously.
That was the first take.
He's a
was,
major artist.
"Meh, meh, 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 meh,
Yeah.
meh."
but even outside of the backwards, like I mean, I guess this is more in the Return, but the kind of like the I am the arm type thing, and the
He
yeah,
doesn't know what you're talking about. He's
I
never
haven't
seen
watched
it.
it.
the darkness, future, past, fire walk with me, all that kind of stuff. It feels
Yeah,
sort of plucked
his
from
his
your
weird
subconscious.
phrasing. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I love that too. I mean, and then going back to the animation thing, yeah, the idea that at any moment somebody could lose their mind, and
Yes,
the way
right.
that you represent that when you're animating is like just a matter of drawing them slightly differently.
Right.
A different light comes into somebody's eyes, or they go a little absent, and then it's very alarming. I mean, I know some people who this movie terrifies them
It's scary.
past the
It
point
is.
of being able to actually watch it.
That not that scary,
Yeah.
but it is scary.
But I think some of that uncanny stuff of like you are suspending your imagination or your disbelief, I guess, in watching these animated human beings talk and thinking of them as humans. That's just what we do when we're watching animation.
There's an innate abstraction.
Yeah, but when that is betrayed, when you are forced to remember you're now watching something that was drawn by people that isn't a person. It's like when somebody has a mask on or something.
Yeah.
It's unsettling. It's like your brain feels like it's being betrayed in the way that like their brains are being betrayed by themselves. It's such a great way. That's why animation is so perfect for this story.
Yes. It is the aspect of Kon's like filmography and his worldview and his style as an artist that feels like it most directly influenced Darren Aronofsky, who does fully credit him as a major influence of just like how scary it is to lose your mind or sense of reality.
Yeah.
That it's not just something that's like cool. It's upsetting.
Yeah. And I think around this time too, I think it is very, you quoted the bit about the internet from the film. Like, I think that there are a lot of things at this time, both like I think that Paranoia Agent dabbles in this a lot. One of my favorite series, Serial Experiments Lane, which I talk about too much, but it's just like one of my favorites, is literally about sort of the blurring of online life and reality.
Fuck.
And it is
cool.
and it's one of these things where in that one also it's like you could do the one-to-one physical representation of this, but just having that fuzziness of animation there feels like such an invitation to explore these ideas of what it feels like to have this sort of land of the imagination online, and then have to then you look up from your computer and you're back in the room with your friends and your people, but that kind of repeated transition from one form of life to another, just kind of breaking people's brains a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think we're living through the aftermath of that.
Yeah.
Like in that culturally, most of us went through about a year of primarily living online. Like, I continue to fucking try to do the cleanup on a year of my life where I basically was only socializing performatively through screens.
Yeah.
And you were wearing normal costumes and all that.
Totally. But also just like never talking to people to their face and being like, well, I'm seeing my friends. I'm talking to people. I'm staying in touch with them. But there is some tangible difference.
Yeah.
No, I noticed no difference. And I love Zoom to this day.
Yeah, I came out of it better. Stronger.
I flew across the country so that we could combat this very phenomenon.
Correct.
And so you could see Clifford.
So I could
on the
see
big
Clifford.
Yeah.
My friend Clifford.
Can we say this quickly?
Another guy in a normal headspace at all times.
Do you know what happened at the Clifford screening?
No.
Oh my God, yes. There's no other time to talk about it.
The good folks at Hollywood Entertainment.
They did a big Q&A with
Martin
Short and a bunch of other folks who worked on Clifford.
Yes. It was Short.
The movie.
The Kind Bar was there.
The Kind Bar was there.
Of course.
He was just walking in the back row of the theater, pacing back and forth.
I almost bumped into him.
Yep.
Yeah. Tracks perfectly so far.
But also the director and one of the writers.
Yeah.
And they opened it up to Q&A at the end. There was a moderated Q&A, and then they opened up to the audience for questions.
Always good to do, especially with a movie like Clifford.
Ben was prompted to ask a question.
Ben, do you
Alex from Hollywood Entertainment was like tapping Emily and I on the shoulder and was like, Ben should ask something.
So what did you ask?
Ben was like very nervous.
I would be nervous too. I hate asking questions at like one of those things. Yeah.
It's very,
It's just they're so often not good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
And the questions were pretty good.
I would say it was a fun Q&A because it went really fast.
Yes.
All the questions were short and the answers were short, ironically, especially when Martin Short was answering them.
The answers were really short.
Yeah, they were short and sweet. I like it when it's more of a comment, though, rather than a question.
Well, I love
you love that?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that.
That's my second favorite thing. My first favorite thing is when someone stands up and tells you about the thing that they're working on.
Oh, so good.
I love to hear about what other people are working
on.
on.
You were like, so I have in my hand a script called Night Eggs.
I pulled out a screenplay.
Now I have more of a comment than a question.
But all the questions I'd say were pretty good, but also Martin Short, if basically he didn't have a good answer for them, had such a good comeback.
He would just make fun of everybody.
So it was like the mood was just growing and growing and growing. And then he kept on being like, I think that's our last question. Wait, should we do one more?
Yeah.
and Alex is like pointing
Right.
at the
Waving
moderator,
frantically
pointing
at
at
Ben.
being like, look at him. And Ben is sheepishly like kind of
boy.
holding his hand up by his shoulder. And I'm like, Ben, up in the air.
So I very respectively addressed him as Mr. Short. And I said that I'm interested in what you brought to the character from your own life.
Yeah.
I, as a kid growing up watching this movie, I really loved seeing myself up on the screen.
Right. Absolutely.
And they got a laugh,
Yeah.
including Martin.
It
Yeah.
broke Marty.
Yeah.
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he said, please escort this man out of the building.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Funny.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was pretty fun.
And then he said, I don't think there's any of myself in this performance. I was very obsessed with the bad seed. I think I was just riffing on that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
I love an honest answer
Yeah.
like that. It's just perfect. It was a lot of fun.
It was great. It
Great
was a
event.
Yeah.
Back
Love
to-
that. Clifford also exists in a liminal state between reality and
Yeah,
dream
sure.
at all times, basically. You're
For
like,
sure.
is everyone going to wake up in this movie? Like, is that what's going on?
Well, like in a lot of anime, like children are voiced by actual adults. So
Yes,
that's
true.
Clifford is almost like a live action
Clifford's like the
adaptation.
original American anime.
Clifford also
It's the
feels
original
like
Cowboy Bebop 2022.
he's also kind of like one of the original, like one of the weird dolls in this movie that starts talking to you. Has kind of like Cliffordy vibes, right?
Yeah. Yes.
One other thing I wanted to just shout out from the opening sequence. I mean, there's lots of great moments in it, but particularly there's a part where there's she goes to visit this man asleep at his computer at an office, and she kind of tucks him in. She puts this jacket over him and then goes like skipping off in a manner identical to Mima, like evil Mima from Perfect Blue.
Oh, interesting.
The sort of dreamy skip. And I don't know, there's something about it. I love that like you come out of this sequence of 4 films, starting with maybe the most nightmarish one, Perfect Blue. And this figure of this sort of figment of the imagination, that's sort of haunting the main character and skipping blithely through her dreams and her subconscious. And now we kind of see that form, that exact sort of image as this healing or at least benign sprite-like character, this dream girl type figure. And I just I love that you kind of come out of the filmography with that transmuted in some way like that. There's something really beautiful about it to me.
That's a good point. Yes. I mean, it's just so hard not to impose these things on the movie as a final work.
I know.
Yeah, no,
Well,
it's unavoidable.
But
with
even
stuff
if
like
it
this.
wasn't the final work, I just think kind of that is clearly a movement, an image that is stuck in his head through these years, like through his filmography.
Right.
And now it kind of takes on a different meaning. And this idea, and what's going on in the subconscious of these characters, which is Kon constantly is using animation to get into a state of mind, more so even than represent things that are physically impossible. It's about being able to show just represent a movement, an expression of something that is internal,
Right.
and just it feels like it has been processed at this point from being merely this malevolent kind of haunting thing, the world of fantasy, the world of, I think in Perfect Blue, a lot of it is sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not repression, but the refusal to grow up.
Yeah.
There's a word for that.
Arrested Development, Peter Pan
Yeah, a
syndrome,
little bit.
Whatever.
And this sort of, that is sort of what that Mima represents. And spoilers, somebody in her life actually trying to literally keep her from growing up and moving on in her life. And I think that there's a more interesting conversation going on in this movie about what dreams represent to people, what dreams represent to him, just the possibility of them, of not just being this regressive, not repressive, regressive tendency.
Yeah. Well, even just the whole, this movie's built on the idea of, if we had the technology to be able to actually see other people's dreams, what would this help us literally understand? Right? It's like medical professionals want to be able to use this to unpack and cleanly just unravel this thing that is inherently an inscrutable through line in all of our lives that you can never totally make sense of.
Yeah. And one of the things I've wrestled with I was just reading an essay I wrote about this movie way back in the year 2010.
Bright Wall Dark Room, check it out.
Bright Wall Dark Room. It's an okay essay, I would say. But
the essay is garbage, but I like the publication.
Right, great publication.
David.
I wasn't even sure it would still be up because they wiped a lot of
That's even worse.
Oh no.
I wrote a fine essay. But I think I was just skimming it, and I think one of the things I was wrestling with in it, which I still kind of wrestle with to a degree, is like the idea that in a lot of ways, I wouldn't say wrestle with it anymore. I've sort of resolved it in my mind, but that the chairman and his sort of what he represents in this argument is on its face like pretty morally good. Like
interesting.
What he wants, like what he's defending is sort of the sanctity of these inner lives, of these psyches, and the idea. I mean, it's very like whatever you think about if you can or whether you should type thing with science and all of that, and you guys are playing God essentially, and in a lot of ways, I think that you could make an argument that is right. That to have the ability, if we did have the ability to in somehow intrude in, meddle with people's subconsciouses, that would be dangerous.
Yeah.
Not a good thing. And also, aside from whatever earthly consequences that could have, like I think that Inception is sort of about that, more of just like what could occur in the real world as a result of messing in people's subconsciouses. Like it's just wrong at a certain point. It is private. It's like, it's like leaking somebody's nudes, but to the nth degree,
Like your brain, your dreams are far more revealing than your, like physical body or
there's
whatever.
There's a season of the television series Sailor Moon.
Sure.
That is the entire, like the bad guys in it are they steal people's dreams. That's the attack. There's always some attack that everybody has. Like every season, it's like, oh, they steal their hearts, they steal their whatever. And then I think it's like the fourth season,
and they stole our hearts, the viewing public, of course.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. But the way these villains do it, they hold up this mirror to people's chests and they like extract the dream, and the way that it's actually really disturbing for a children's animation, especially the way that it's represented is like a rape. It is somebody pinned down screaming as this sort of extremely private inner thing is taken from them. And I think that is one way that you could view this technology, the whole idea of somebody partaking of somebody's dream, is that it is intrusive and violent. But I think that's what is so interesting about this film ultimately, is that it is about if you want to take the metaphor really far, the intruding into people's dreams is what film is what storytelling is.
Right.
And Millennium Actress, I think, really explores that and kind of puts that on the page, at least, and as far as his ideas.
Right. Her memories are also her movies are also
all of our memories.
Exactly.
Our
memories of her.
Now.
Movies are voyeuristic, but they're also dreams. Like,
and they're also
no one has
implants.
ever made movies seem voyeuristic. No one's ever tried that in a movie before. It's never happened.
Well, I wrote a skeet on bluesky.com that I'll paraphrase.
Wait a second. Are they actually called skeets?
They are called skeets.
Yes.
Skeet
Really?
on the blue sky. Blue skeeting.
Because it's sky.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I think Blue Sky for a while was like, no, they're called posts. And like the people were like, we've decided they're called skeets. And they were like, very fine, Jesus.
But
whatever.
Emily, you skeeted?
You skeeted.
I skeeted about, I had been watching Millennium Actress, and I'm trying to find it.
Well, you should go to the window or to the wall maybe to find it.
Jesus.
Fuck, that's what it is
Yes,
from.
skeet.
Yeah. No,
Is everyone doing okay?
I'm not.
Griffin's upset, but I don't even know about which part.
That was good joke math, but in a way where I couldn't even laugh at it. Like it felt like it knocked the wind out of me. Like, oh fuck! Oh,
wasn't it great how Usher did the Super Bowl, and I was like, "Is Lil Jon going to show up just to say, yeah? Oh yeah, there he is.
There he is.
Okay, yeah, he flew in.
He did. I didn't watch. He got on mic and went, yes,
Yes.
yes.
Why?
I love a return of
affirmative.
hip hop Sims. Anyway, what my skeet was skeet.
Oh my god.
And it's really appropriate for that. But I said cinema is a contagious mental disorder, but one that everybody has and is benign with the right treatment, like
Hell yeah.
HPV. And I
So
think
you got really specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I do generally think that is my takeaway from the films of Satoshi Kon, and that is how I'm able to reconcile the essential correct position of you should not intrude in people's dreams being, well, they've already been intruded in anyway by these collective myths that we have. And those things are very powerful and shape how we think of everything, how we think of ourselves, like how we think of ourselves as being within a narrative. There's, I'm going to completely botch this. I think it was like Freud who was basically like, films have done more than any other narrative to shape our subconscious and like give us a structure within which to imagine our lives. This isn't a quote. I'm completely paraphrasing.
Sure.
The invention of the movie was the invention of the movie star and the ability for us to identify and think of ourselves as movie stars within a movie with a beginning and an end. And that is can be a really corrosive thing. It leads to a lot of people doing a lot of fucked up shit because they think they're in a movie. I don't mean like that they think it's not real, but they're thinking of themselves as being in these kind of linear stories that revolve around them. And I think like taken in the wrong way, stories can be like kind of toxic, but then they can also be wonderful and they can open up your world in all sorts of ways. And so I think there's like a pessimistic and an optimistic way of looking at this, which is what I think this movie is about.
What do you think Freud would have thought about the fact that Viggo Mortensen would eventually play him in a movie? Because he didn't
That's
really like
really
movies.
what we should.
Here's what he would say. He'd go, I would never fold a pizza that way. Do you understand the joke?
I do.
Implying that he was playing the character of Sigmund Freud in the film Green Book, which happened to win Best Picture.
Yes, Best Picture of the Year, which is a confirmation that movies are good. What were you saying?
Do we have more Freud business to get to?
Nope, all done.
I think that's such an interesting comment.
I
I
agree.
never really thought of that before, but there's an evolution to dreams, right? Like cavemen, primitive men, people, they dreamed. It's an inherent thing that all human beings do, but the language of dreams has definitely changed.
Some could call dreams the original technology.
I don't know about that, actually.
How about this?
Ew,
the human
disgusting.
brain, the original technology.
There we go.
And dreams, its greatest app.
software.
I would say, though, video games are probably
I gotta
also
go.
having an effect, too,
Absolutely.
on people.
And I think that's where you see these big schisms in how one generation relates to the next is like what's its primary mode of storytelling. Like I don't dream in video games because I don't play them.
Right.
I don't dream in TikTok because I'm not on TikTok.
My dreams are incredibly cinematic, unsurprisingly.
Yeah.
Like my dreams apply the language of film to whatever I'm trying to work through. I mean, it's like dreams are this unconscious, subconscious processing of whatever things you're going through, right?
Yeah.
Like there's this fucking shorthand of people saying like, oh, I don't want to hear you describe your dreams. I love hearing people describe their dreams.
I feel the way that Emily does, where sometimes someone's describing their dream and it's kind of like a little whatever.
Well,
rude.
if you're a bad storyteller, if you don't know how to.
But sometimes I'm like, you are telling me something quite vulnerable.
There's a real intimacy of like, what is the thing? In the way that I like waking up and being like, why the fuck did I dream about that?
Yeah.
You know? Like, why did that person come back into my head?
Right.
And sometimes you're like, well, oh, right, because I fucking saw this right before I went to sleep.
Yeah.
But other times you're like, why is my brain using this as the metaphor to work through whatever I'm worried about or feeling good about or whatever it is? And there's this feeling of like, we watch movies, right? The people in this room. And if there is an odd choice, we go like, why did they do that? Like we're thinking about the intent of the people who made the thing. Yeah. Why was that written? Why was that done in this way? Why did the actor deliver that line?
Why was that in their mind?
Take?
And why are we seeing it this way?
There's nothing in here that if something really bumps you're like, was that a deliberate choice that I don't understand or a mistake that was made? But either way, there's some reason that ended up that way. But you wake up in the morning from a dream and you can have that same struggle of like, why the fuck did that happen in that way? Except it's you.
Yeah.
It's you unconsciously, and you're wrestling with like, I mean, that's the intimacy of it, of like, why the fuck did I dream that?
Yeah.
In a way that is upsetting. But you're like, but I made myself watch that.
Yeah. That then becomes, I mean, then the friction arrives when somebody tells you, oh, you were my dream last night.
Right.
And like that feeling that you get when somebody tells that to you, where you're like, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but aside from the potential horny implications of that, there is the thing of like, what was I doing?
Yes.
Right.
Because I didn't have any control over that person. What was I mean, that's like called a projection in Inception, but like, what was my projection up to?
Your imagination of me, what was it doing?
It is.
And sometimes they're like, you were a bug and I squashed you with a giant rock. Like,
it's like, cool, great. Okay, that's what you think.
Thanks.
But that is like the one very like poignant idea that Dream Scenario has, is that people start holding it against him.
Yeah.
There's a good version of a better version of that
it doesn't
movie
execute it well.
Right,
but the
that figures
notion
out how that would go.
of him going from a novelty to being like, I'm made uncomfortable by your presence because in my dream last night, you did something strange.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The best part is when he just walks weird. I like that.
Well, Cage is like,
he's good at that.
Putting Cage in a scenario where he gets to act out dreams is smart, and the rest of that movie is not very smart.
But like, so then the idea of having that weird feeling of I was in somebody else's head, I was doing something, manipulating them in some indirect way, not because I had direct puppet-like control over that person in their mind, but because whatever I've done in the real world somehow influenced what I was doing there.
Yeah.
And like the conceit of Paprika is like, what if you actually did have direct control over that? What if you could be this illusion but have some sense of purpose within somebody's mind?
Go ahead, Griffin Newman, and then I want to say something that might sort of take us off this topic. And it's not going to be about Viggo Mortensen playing Frank.
I was going to say a thing that took us off a topic. So you go off topic first, and then I'll go into a different topic.
Emily, just to throw up, you said like the villain of this movie is ultimately revealed to be the chairman.
Yeah.
Inui. I think is his name. He's the chairman.
He's the
He looks
chairman.
like the crypt keeper.
He's in a chair.
He's right. He's in a wheelchair. There's some sort of vague notion that maybe he wants to kind of transcend his body, right? Like that's
this
part
is
of
what
his
I was going to say. If I can branch off this quickly, you
Go
mentioned earlier that this is the film where Kon
what is this? Trolls the movie?
A character my therapist famously thinks I'm very similar to.
She's correct.
That she used dream technology to look inside my
and
brain.
she's like, you are Branch.
Yeah,
you can't
need
stop
more
the feeling,
order.
or you have to not stop the feeling.
You should start stopping.
Please branch off my thought.
Branch, like from the Trolls movie.
Okay.
You said that he was experimenting more with like characterization, and his first three films, I'd say the first two in particular, have pretty literal character designs. Obviously, there's some degree of stylization inherent in animation, but they're pretty rigid, on-model characters that have fairly realistic human proportions, right? Tokyo Godfathers, the main trio, gets a little bit more into
They're all
classic
different shapes,
cartoon
exactly.
silhouettes,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
But it's not stretching it as much. The three doctors in this movie look like Professor X, Toad, and the Blob.
Yes.
Right? Like they are all very extreme.
Yes, obviously, right. The chief is the Professor X. The chief is the Toad. He's a little guy.
Right.
Yeah,
the chairman is the Professor X type, who's this like
He's
reedy
bald,
old man
but yes,
who's
he's
bald.
very willowy. I mean, he looks like a slender man in a suit.
And then Takeda is like this crazy like design where the inventor who's like he's overweight, but it's like sometimes
he can
feels
fill up an elevator.
Exactly, it feels like he changes size, like depending on the scene.
It feels like you're seeing a visual representation of his self-consciousness of his own size.
Yeah.
The feeling of like, I've walked into a room that's a little too small for me now.
Yeah.
And I'm pouring over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if we want to talk about Tokita a little bit.
Sure.
On that, like, in the book, I mean, I haven't gotten to the end of it.
You said the book is not very nice.
The book is pretty mean, but also Japanese people are really mean to fat people in general, and they're very open about body shaming. So that there's that, and I mean, there's some of that in this film, and I know some people also
30 years old, right?
Yeah, and some people like bristle against that a bit. I think what it gets to in the end, and it's interesting to think about it in context of the hoodlum thing you're talking about, is like that when she, and I mean, I know this isn't like nice or like politically correct necessarily, but at the end when she's talking about him and why she loves him, Atsuko, one of the things she says is that like, you eat everything. And there's a way to be like, see that as like a very body shaming type comment, but there's something about his gleeful consuming of everything. There's some in the book. The thing about him is he is childlike and he's very enthusiastic and he wants to do everything and just forge forward, which is very different from her character.
Yeah.
And it's sort of about the balance between the two of them, that like you could, as an Atsuko or any kind of scientist type, look on him with like ridicule and be like, well, he's a genius, but he's also just has no self-control. But the idea that like that sort of
the voracious appetite is directly tied to him being a genius.
Yeah.
It is the amount that he processes and collects and engages with.
But he's childlike in that he's like sharing dreams. What a lovely idea.
It's so great.
Like
what
he can only think of it as like a dream, as like a hope, like, an imagined future.
All these, like, fucking AI tech bros who get on the news and they're like, normal. If we keep pushing this technology, we're going to perfect civilization. Yeah. There is no potential downside.
And it's interesting to think about that sort of, tech bro mindset as being just childlike as opposed to malevolent. Because I think right now, with how much it's taking away people's jobs and people's artwork and stuff like that. Like, it's easy to just look at it as like the product of a purely evil, like negligent to the point of evil mindset. But like, what if they're just like little children and we have let little children be driving the wheel of like everything in society? Like, it's a kind of more complex way of looking at it a little bit, and even more of a like reason that there should be more checks and balances.
Like hoodlum Kon without like the Kon setting boundaries. Cop Kon.
Right.
I just think it's interesting that the three doctor characters are the only three in the quote unquote reality section of the movie who do look that extreme.
They look like you're like, am I in the dream right now or not? Whenever you're looking
That's
at them.
their realistic state. And as you said, it is even fungible when you're in reality. Yes. And there are three people who seem to be at odds with their own physical forms. Like there is this, and it's sort of what Atsuko is talking about at the end of the movie when she talks about why she loves him, of just like how surprising it is that like the greatest brain in the world is housed inside this body.
Yeah.
Which feels like a mean thing to say. But what she's really saying is just sort of like, and it's the whole relationship we have to dreams of like, there is this whole part of you, conscious or unconscious, that is not directly connected to your physical body.
Yeah.
It's almost random. Yeah. Right?
And if you are spending all this time in this place, in this dream state where things are more changeable and dynamic, where somebody can show up in any form they want, then like it's all the more reason to value that part of them and not like the physical form that you interact with in the mundane world.
Takeda has this like great shame. As you said, David, it feels like Inui has like this almost contempt for his body, or at least a desire for a greater body.
And that's why he like idolizes Osanai, the like one normal looking person.
Who is hot. In a boring way, but
in a
he's
boring,
hot.
hot way.
And he's like, I control your body. Like he keeps saying that. In the dream world, to be clear, right? That's the hot doctor guy who you initially are kind of like, oh, he's like a researcher and he's helping, and it turns out he's in league with the chief.
Yeah.
He's also obsessed with Atsuko / Paprika.
Everybody is.
The single most disturbing image in the movie for me is
him like putting his hand inside her.
It's
very
really,
cool.
really
like peeling her.
Yeah. It's very troubling. It's among some of the more troubling.
But it's sort of like he's ripping off her dream persona.
Yeah.
But the way he's doing it, it's like, it obviously is this like physical assault.
Yeah.
But as his like hand is going through her, she's like rippling like waves.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so,
Forky didn't like it.
Yeah.
Forky liked the movie, to be clear, but was distressed by that scene.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people kind of physically invading each other's bodies in this while they're in the dream state. Like Paprika kind of getting Shima, the what is he, the director, like out of his dream, out of the parade dream by sinking herself into him and blowing him up to like gargantuan. And like I know David hated this, but I was like that is so much cooler than a kick. I was like,
I think the
you
kicks
could
are really
shoot
cool.
somebody, or you could sink
It's
into
not
their
shooting.
body.
What I like is that it's falling, because that is what happens.
No,
in
it's
dreams. When
there
you
is
fall,
falling.
you
Yeah,
wake
no,
up,
it's great. It's
weird.
great. It's great. But
What a
there's
wonderful
just
movie,
something.
5 stars, Best Picture.
That's a good
It's so fun to just like that's just such an
Podcast,
interesting way to think about. It's almost like you get too big for the dream that you're in.
Yeah.
And you have to you just can't exist in it anymore. Which is sort of the other way it feels like if you don't have the falling thing out of a dream, sometimes it feels like, oh my God, my consciousness is too big for this space anymore. I have to leave. Like
I dream fairly lucidly, but to an extent that I find frustrating, where I don't really feel like I have control over my dreams, but I have intense awareness of the fact that I'm in a dream.
Yeah.
And there are those moments where I'm like, this dream is going in a direction other than what I want to be seeing. And I'm trying to pull it back. And it does have that feeling of almost like vertigo of falling, where I'm like, no, don't have that character turn into this other character.
Yeah.
Don't have me leave this room.
Yeah.
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 Which this movie does not have clear rules like kicks or such. I mean, Nolan's by design trying to establish a set of rules for the audience to understand so that we can enjoy
Turn it
action
into
sequences.
technology.
It's an instruction manual turned into an action film. But
Versus
Paprika,
this movie is like you're watching characters in real time be like, how would I get out?
How does this work? There is
people who
technobabble in it, but
there is, and
rarer.
And
there's
the thing
not
about
an obvious sort of path. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is that these characters all start off the movie thinking this is a technology that they know the rules of and how to control, and that it so quickly goes off the rails, and that the fact that there are no rules and that basically anything can happen, like in a dream, is sort of what takes them by surprise and causes all sorts of troubles. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the parade a little bit, which and just how we get there, which is that. At first they think that Tokida's assistant Himuro is the one who's basically stolen the DC Mini and is imparting his own sort of obsessions,
right? And
into
initially, he's pegged as kind of like he's the villain,
yeah,
right? Like you know, this is he caused this problem,
yeah.
But he's really just a symptom of a larger problem, of this machine is sort of out of control.
Yeah. And we see that, several of the other people who work at this institution who are also presumably using this have sort of caught this virus, essentially, that they think at first that Himuro has caused. And that is manifested as this parade, which feels like... It feels almost like, did you guys ever play Katamari Damacy?
I played it. Yeah, you're rolling. You're picking stuff up. You're a big ball.
You're this big snowball that you just try to get as big as possible and pick up and you can only, the bigger you get, the bigger things you can pick up. It's like being a planet with a greater and greater force of gravity.
It's like an insurrection of dream items, right? Like, what was that weird object in the dream? And it's like, what if all of them came together and stormed the Capitol?
Yeah, and none of them faded away.
And the Capitol in this case is fucking reality.
Damn. Oh, fuck.
Sorry, you were saying.
No, I was just saying. But the other thing about it is that nothing is fading away, that it's all staying. And that's one
you don't
thing,
wake up and it goes away.
Yeah, and that's one thing about dreams is that things are ephemeral in dreams ultimately. It's really annoying when you have a dream like I was having last night because I'm a little bit sick that you can't get rid of.
Yes.
That doesn't go away, that you feel like you're stuck in this loop and this endless
loop.
Dream? It was something to do with shampoo. I can't remember. But it was just I was going back and forth with these different shampoos and I couldn't get out of this shampoo cycle. It really sucked. I mean, that's to me is what Millennium Actress is about, is that you can't get out of this one fixation, this one dream, and you are just cursed to repeat it over and over and over again, which is a little bit, that makes its way into this as well. But the one of the most menacing things about the parade dream is that it is just getting bigger and bigger. There's it doesn't shift. It doesn't go in phases. It's just like a tumor that just keeps growing.
And it's got a serious case of the Kool-Aid Man. It keeps bursting through walls like the least
expected. But there's this
know.
one musical sting that is very repetitive, right? That does not change. And I don't know if you folks have this. As someone who has bad sleep habits, I know you're in a similar boat, Ben. There are times where my alarm has been going off for 30 minutes And I'm like, why am I not waking up?
Sure.
Why did this
You're
not
hearing
get
it
to
in
me?
the dream often.
Correct. My dream starts to justify
Incorporate
it as a logic.
You're
where it's-
missing the kick.
Yes, there's like part of the reality where it's like I'm in some other room and for whatever reason some weird sound is happening and me and the other people in the dream are trying to locate the source of the sound, and then 30 minutes later I wake up and I'm like, oh, my alarm's been going off for half an hour.
Yeah.
And the parade music has that feeling to me of just like, why is this just this like constant loop?
I had it stuck in my head also all night last night while I was dreaming, which was a lot as well because we had just watched the movie right before. And just having that loop on. Yeah, and then there's like so literal. It's just like I watched a movie and it made its way into my I watched the movie about the dreams and their contagiousness, and then I got it. And it was in my dream. It's kind of magic. The original technology.
The killer app. It's wild that this movie also, like, in a way that feels earned, builds to a midway point where the characters are talking about dreams inside a movie theater while one character is dreaming of the version of himself that did become a filmmaker, and they just start explaining film language.
Yes. Yeah.
And illustrating
he defines the line. A lot of people could watch this and learn something. No, I'm joking. No, nobody crosses the line. It's cool that he crosses the line and shows you how unsettling.
And
it
it does a flip edit.
Yeah.
But I noticed this because I watched it 2 times in succession. So there is a moment where they cross the line early on, which is so key. And I always wonder why this part is so exciting to me. It's right before Shima enters jumps through the window and enters into the parade. And he's running down. It's after he's had his big gibberish monologue, and then he starts running down the hall, and he says, "Now, right now," and it flips. You do that. There's 2 cuts on him from the same angle, from the same distance but opposite angle, and that's the last thing you see before he jumps through the window. Is like this sort of uncanny flip into a place you're not supposed to be.
A lot of like high-level filmmakers cross the line on purpose to destabilize you by design.
No, it's as a flex.
Right.
It's as a fuck you to their film professors.
The rules, quote unquote, of film language, right?
Are you don't want to disorient people by doing this, so you can do it to disorient people.
You're basically trying to create, maintain a sustained state of dreamlike comfort. If you do things like that, it rattles people.
Yeah.
You want to sort of obscure the craft, right? You want invisible edits.
Mm-hmm.
You want camera movements that aren't showy, because you just want to keep people submersed in the thing rather than reminding them of the artificiality of what you're creating.
No, when I make a movie, it'll be star wipes for every cut, not just transitions between scenes.
Who are you, Trisha Cook?
That's cool. You should do that.
That movie is well edited.
I agree.
Yeah, it's fucking fun.
I think people don't like it, but I'm like, no, this is intentional, and this person knows what she's doing.
But the whole fucking Godard thing was that he was like, anyone trying to create a realism in film is inherently being dishonest. It's like a medium of lies. And so I'm going to do like jump cuts and cross the line and put continuity errors in there, because the only honest thing to do is to constantly remind people.
It's like, I know that some people jam and they think that's so exciting,
I
but
find
for
him
me,
exhausting.
I find him completely exhausting.
Some of his movies I love.
I don't.
Not one? What's your favorite?
Now remember, you're trying to not piss the fans off.
All right, you're trying to.
What's your favorite?
Masculine and Feminine. I love.
Oof.
You dislike that one?
Yeah.
Wow.
That one's rough.
Woman is a Woman. Do you hate that one too?
Yes, I hate that one too.
Okay. Well, you've established you hate all of them.
No, I like Alphaville.
Alphaville rules.
Yeah, Alphaville's fun.
David's yawning.
I don't mind it. I've always found it like kind of like when I read about it as a teenager, I was like, well, that's going to be my favorite movie of all time.
Right.
And I've watched it several times, never been able to quite click into it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like the early ones because I'm a basic bitch. But
admittedly, I haven't seen them all. He's quite prolific, and there's something I like more.
My wife almost divorced me after I made her go see Weekend with me at BAM one
really?
time. Yeah, that movie's.
You were married at that point?
No, we were.
Okay.
So my wife almost
pre-divorce.
Yeah.
Because if you remember Weekend, you're like, it's set in a traffic jam, like it's so clever and all that, and you're like, well, that's like 40% of the movie, and that part is already kind of a tough hang. And then there's people eating sandwiches while someone monologues about communism.
I mean, look,
for like a while.
the thing is that, like, I get at that point in history that people did want to deconstruct film.
Yes,
like,
of course. That's what
that's
he's
the
so
whole-
vital to that.
Yeah, and at some point you have to do that. It's like being a teenager. You have to you've spent your childhood being, swept up by these stories and the way in which, they alter your reality and your consciousness and your dreams and all of that. And then you're like, what if we just fucked with it? And what if we gave the middle finger to film? And like, that's all very well and good. I just don't care to spend, like, I know that was a necessary moment of evolution for the form. And it's just not what I'm interested in far as why I like this art form, what I'm interested in with it. I love to have my beliefs suspended. I love to have the edges blurred. That is what draws me to it. That I feel like there's just such possibility in that.
Love to see a pig herd sheep better than any dog ever could.
I know, it's like, and I believe it when it's happening.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that pig is the best sheep herder in history.
He is. There's
He's
record
a very
of it. It's
good
called
pig.
Babe the Movie.
Yeah. And he's a really good pig.
But that'll do.
Kind of the best pig.
That will do.
That's
though.
enough.
That's enough.
Yeah.
That's Cop Kon. That's Cop.
Right. George Miller is
No
like, but that'll do. I know
How
it's
funny would it be if the actual final line was like, okay, that's enough. Babe.
That's enough, Paprika.
Don't get too fucking big for your britches.
Don't go crazy now.
Don't move to a fucking city.
Okay, I'm throttling us. I'm throttling us into plot mode. I know this is not a movie we can like really easily go
I think we
beat
can
by
pretty
beat
easily
on.
go
But obviously, we talked about the opening stuff. Where she's dealing with this guy's dream. And then, yes, she works at this company. The DC Mini has been stolen. Nonsensical things are starting to happen. People are losing their minds and doing inexplicable things.
Yes.
And when you enter their dreamscape, it feels like all the dreams are mashing together into a giant Katamari Damacy snowball.
Shima jumped out the window, and they cannot tell if he lost his mind because of spending too much time in there or if someone had hijacked his mind. And was acting within him or what.
Yeah.
But something weird is afoot.
Yeah.
So, yes, the chairman is always sitting in front of books and being like, I am very normal and not the villain of the movie at all. And nothing weird is going on with me. I look,
he's very
fucking Slender Man ghost.
Yes.
Like
he just comes in and just says absolutes about science. And,
and I'm banning the device. That'll fix it. Obviously, that fixes nothing.
No, only
nothing.
a Sith deals in absolutes.
so-
That should have been the first tell.
But so Emily, because you were saying he kind of has a point. What is his, apart from wanting to transcend his own body and kind of control this world, what is his goal in doing all of this?
I mean, that's a great question, right? Because I think part of it is that he becomes intoxicated by the dream world that he's trying to control. Like he becomes a victim of it as well. This sort of, I mean, one of the themes of everybody experiences when they enter this parade dream is they are at the top of this pile of stuff, basically the kind of king of it.
Yeah.
And there's a megalomania to this dream, this false sense of power that is the thing that everybody, leads people to jump through windows because they think they can do whatever they want. And I think the way I've read it, at least these last couple times, is that he is not immune to that. And that he becomes the biggest megalomaniac of all, trying to basically turn the real world into his own kind of playground where he is all powerful, has legs, has giant legs because he's huge, and is just the opposite of everything, that he's constrained by in the real world.
It is the thing that is disturbing, though, when you have to witness someone who is experiencing a psychotic break from reality, is there is a sense of very high stakes to them.
Yes.
They are caught up in a reality that feels very urgent and dangerous to some degree. You witness people who just are very intent that what they're talking about is right and correct and that this needs to be solved immediately. Be it the video that went viral of the woman yelling at the guy on the plane or things like that, where it's just you need to believe me, this is happening right now.
Guy's
and
not real.
It's very...
I really wanted that to be the beginning of Paprika.
Yeah.
In our
that's
life.
what it
And instead
feels
she was
like,
dude, I was just having a really shitty time.
Right.
I was on some weird
But that's also
combo of things.
not to go all fucking stoner on the floor about it, but it's that's what movies are, right? Movies are a woman standing there and going, "Oh my God, he's there, he's killing me,"
Yeah.
and there's no one off camera, and then later they shoot Robert Englund once they get him out of the makeup truck.
Sure. Absolutely.
And those are the fake stakes that you're creating. I also just want to call out Takeda in the dream world exists in the form of like an old wind-up robot.
Yeah.
It's like a toy robot.
Where his head is like a TV screen, which makes a ton of sense for his psychology of just like, I wish I had like a controlled mechanical physical form.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where my thoughts could just be like projected on a screen on the outside of my body.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to think about like any organic matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like a brain in a robot.
And it's also like it comes from this robot that's on his shirt that's also at this like dreamland, like shuttered down amusement park that both him and Himuro are obsessed with, which is very haunting, a great place to set something like this.
The parade feels like it's made up entirely of like childhood totems. Because even like the dancing appliances in it look older. They're like retro 50s, 60s fridges and things like that.
It's just a childish concept, right? Everything coming to life. A sort of Brave Little Toaster scenario.
A lot of like stuffed animals and
And
dolls,
the way that
obviously.
they in the dub or not in the dub in the original dialogue, at least the way that people speak, especially at the end when it merges into reality and you have everybody joining the parade and like chanting these things, the kind of cadence of the chant is very like old-timey like festivals and stuff where people there are several where people kind of do these coordinated dances and it's kind of has a da 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 type cadence and that's very like that's very like old-timey Japanese.
Okay.
It's also like there's a little bit of that in Spirited Away at certain points where people kind of speak in that.
There's a more ceremonial.
It's sort of ceremonial, sort of folksy a little bit,
right?
And that's kind of where that comes from. But what was I going to say about Tokita?
Takeda, who eventually goes in by himself in his energy of like, I'm sure I can solve this.
Yeah.
Like we just need to, figure, and immediately gets sucked into the dream.
Like,
right.
This
Cooler
very
heads will
naive.
prevail. Right.
Yeah, this naive belief that like a personal connection, like in reality, a grounded connection with somebody can supersede the power of this dream, which is just like snowballed at this point. I did want to call one thing, which is like, I'm sure that Kon has his own inspiration for the theme park in this, but like if anybody wants to see the real version of Dreamland IRL, you can just go in Berlin to this thing called Spree Park,
Spree Park,
SPREE Park. It's a shutdown amusement park from it might be pre-war, honestly. I can't remember. It's really haunting.
It's post-war.
It's post-war.
It's from the late 60s.
Is it the one in Hannah, the Joe Wright film?
Possibly.
I don't know.
It's got a big Ferris wheel that's maybe still there.
It's all like
Hannah.
covered in moss and stuff.
Yeah.
It is one of the most like you feel like you're walking into a movie. Like you can't believe it exists in real life type places. And that definitely, I saw that after I had seen Paprika multiple times and was like, oh my God, I'm in Paprika right now.
Cool.
It's pretty cool.
This looks pretty cool. I mean, nothing's cooler than fucking abandoned amusement park. Just, and there's like some like painted, faded like metal sculpture or whatever.
But
anyway.
also, I mean, what you're talking about like nature overtaking the inorganic.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
When you have like man-made objects that like are now covered in moss and shit. I always find that spooky.
Yeah.
Evocative.
But like again, like these things that both Himuro ostensibly, because we never really meet him and as such, and Tokita are obsessed with are these things of childhood. Like the robot that Tokita turns into is this figure from this park that's also on his shirt. He's obsessed with all these little toys. He's
the apartment full of doll heads.
Yeah.
A thing I can't relate to.
You weren't vibing with that at all.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine what Griffin's contribution to the giant parade would be if he was to...
Oh, boy.
The parade just quadrupled in size.
I would just take a look directly behind me.
That's like the
parade
opening.
right here. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
just the first.
I'm for the listeners at home.
There's a bunch of fucking toys behind
a lot of memorabilia and toys
sure.
Griffin has brought here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I've contributed so much to this shelf. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
actually struggling to see something I brought. Where?
I want to just take a picture of Ben in front of this, like, and really
Sure
frame it so
can.
that all you can see is the toys and just play the Susumu Hirasawa music over
We
it.
should post that.
It's a lot. We should definitely do that. But but I think like this idea that's sort of wrapped up in the idea of regression and the idea of this all being tied to childhood,
right.
and, which of course it would be if you're talking like in psychoanalytic terms. This is all stuff that has to do with the deepest wounds, the most primal things that happened to you as a kid. Those are the things that still find their way into your dream. You're still dreaming about being late to class, even when you're like in your 30s.
Fucking only dream
it's
I
awful.
have. It sucks.
And like that being a part of, I think, what somebody like the chairman is sort of frowning upon is like, we don't want to, muddle in this stuff. Like there is something like, let's all be grown-ups here. Let's not, muck around in these, or encourage, I guess, these dream states, these regressive dream states.
Well, it's because it's coming from this place of like the human psyche is a thing that can be solved. It can be perfected in this very like tech line of thinking.
Yeah.
Of like, you can just get the bugs out of any system.
Yeah.
Okay. There's two things that happen in the dream world that we need to talk about. One is, so you got Osanai, who is the hot young doctor who's sort of the, enforcer for the chief.
Sure.
In the dream world. He is one obsessed with Chiba and Paprika, as we said, and sort of like peels her, right? But then there's also this big battle he has with Kanekawa that is his demise. That is very like there's this like unspoken thing where he's kind of in charge of the dream, and then Kanekawa kind of takes charge of the dream.
Sure.
And it's this dream Kanekawa is having of like a hotel hallway with a body falling that he's shot, and it's him, and like what does it mean?
And perspective keeps distorting.
Right. When he's running, the walls melt and all that. And like then he's thinking about it with Paprika when she's trying to help him through the dream, he's realizing, right, this is me reckoning with the choices I made as a young Pan and the path I followed. We already talked about it.
A young Pan.
Young Pan, like a Joe Wright kind of a vibe. Two of his movies have come up.
Wow.
I'm going to think of a third to squeeze in here. And
he's kind of a soloist in terms of he used to be doing a duet with his young friend, and then he went off. What is it?
Just if we ever do Joe Wright, that's the one we're going to be kind of like white knuckling it for fucking soloist.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So and then he Kanekawa finally like takes control and shoots Osanai.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Killing him both in the dream world and the real world. And sort of self-actualizing all at the same time.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, I love how like we've been seeing this image from the start of the movie. And it's no point does anyone ever say to him like, here's what you have to do, or like, here's what the thing is with this, this recurring dream of yours.
Sure.
But when it happens, it does make a sort of dream logic-y sense to the viewer of what has happened.
Yeah.
Or what has changed about that. Griffin's playing Disney Emoji Blitz right now.
I am not on my laptop. That's not how it works, David.
I knew that would make you so mad.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, like that's like one like sort of little mini arc in the dream world,
right?
That is interesting.
Yeah, and it's how those two storylines converge because for a long time it's like Paprika doing her own kind of renegade psychology with Konakawa and going into his recurring dream and trying to figure that out. Meanwhile, like it's just Atsuko for a long time who is investigating the viral dream, the parade dream.
Right.
And then, we kind of have hints from early on that they're the same person, but when she finally like acknowledges it, it becomes like a spoken thing. And it's like the first time she dives in to investigate it for herself. And that's when she discovers this Osanai and the chairman link.
Right. And Paprika, right. Paprika obviously is her like dream avatar, essentially, right? Dream adventure.
Right.
It's funny because in the book, she literally like dresses up like that. Like when she goes to meet the character who takes the place of Konakawa in it, like she goes literally to the radio club, like it's a real place. She changes her outfit and puts on a wig and paints freckles on her face to look like Paprika, which is so funny. Like I when I realized that in the book, I was like, that's absurd. Like I love her just being this sort of shifty thing that exists. Because she looks completely different.
Yes, she does.
She doesn't look like Atsuko with a
It's not just a different outfit. Her bone structure is different.
Yeah. And I but that's what
which is cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which we like.
It's great that like, and it's all about like what one perceives. Like I think like that even in the real world, you can see what you want to see in somebody else.
But within the dream world, I mean, she is functioning as like a literal escort for her clients, not escort as like a term for it, but she's like the one who is guiding them through and creating some sense of security and understanding for them. And then the last like 20, 30 minutes of this movie, the detective is basically like stuck without her.
Yeah.
And the two bartenders played by Kon and Satsui, who you have to assume are like extensions of his own psyche, are the ones guiding him through. And like it's so fascinating metatextually that the writer of the novel and the film become the two characters,
the guides,
who ultimately have to like lead him through to catharsis.
Yes,
and it's that but it's ultimately like. Yeah, those are his constructs. He doesn't have Paprika anymore. Like he's
doing it himself.
Yeah, he can be on his own. And that's like that's the growth.
Yeah.
But the Paprika thing is also important.
Is she important?
She's an important character.
Okay.
The convergence of the two characters as things go on, right? Like the implication to me is like when Osanai like peels her, that kind of frees Paprika in a way and makes Paprika her own character.
Yes.
Right? Like when she's returned, right,
Yeah.
she has become basically just a dream person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have in the big sort of showdown at the end of the movie where there's suddenly a gigantic hole in the city and the chief is turned into a Godzilla and is walking around and all this stuff. Paprika is like completely unempathetic to Takeda. She's like, forget him. Like, I don't want to save him. Like, he sucks. He's annoying. And like, that must be part, like the further she's getting away from like that.
Yeah.
But then
Atsuko is the one who has to like elect to help him
right.
and like admit her love for him. And I love that because like when, we see it as them interacting as two humans, but it's like giant Atsuko just like holding robot Tokita and Paprika looks at like after she's sort of made her declaration of love and she's like, Atsuko's dreaming. And it's so sweet because it's like, that's also been like a running thing is that she can't actually dream.
Right.
Like
she's kind of freeing up that side of herself.
Yeah.
Again.
And so that's what's been freed from the separation.
Again, like the showdown at the end is, surreal, but like.
It's a little crazy.
Yeah. Paprika essentially jumps into Takeda to
Mm-hmm.
make the sort of baby that then eats the chief, like sucks him up like a vacuum cleaner, like Takeda, right? Like I eat everything, right? Like that.
Yeah.
And then grows and turns into a giant kind of hybrid Chiba, Atsuko, Paprika, naked woman, and then goes
giant,
poof.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
It all rules.
Nolan ripped that off frame for frame. It's so creepy when Leo does that in Inception.
Yeah.
Just becomes a giant naked lady. Yeah. I mean, there's something to me that's so I love the idea of this, and it goes back to the childhood thing. It's like only this child, only this like naive baby figure can have the power to kind of dispel all this and actually like be so voracious, so like incurably voracious that you can kind of bring balance back to a world taken over by chairman-like figures. And there's something very hopeful and like, like I don't know. I think that as wild as that imagery is, I think there's something super like moving about it.
Well, this is also one of those movies with a perfect final line. Like a final line where you're like, it knocks you out where you're like, Jesus
it's so
fucking
good.
Christ. It's not too clever, but you're like, there's the whole movie right there.
Yep.
There's not a single word that needs to be said after this.
Mm-hmm.
One adult, please. A term we use all the fucking time as movie-going freaks.
Sure.
That we do not imbue any larger meaning on. You're just telling people how much you need to pay for your ticket, right? I guess we must buy tickets fucking online now.
Well, you say one adult and you have to acknowledge I am an adult who's going to go see a movie and I'm going to engage with it. And he's going to see a movie called Dreaming Kids, which honestly, let's check out Dreaming Kids. I want to know what happens in that movie.
He's like avoided watching his whole adult life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And now that he's finally like processed his
he can go see.
He can
go
self-identify as an adult and go to the movies and start like
go to a movie about the dreaming kids. And view it as a healthy adult, like a well-adjusted, ideally adult.
Yeah.
And that's like that to me is such a Kon theme.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like this isn't even a spoiler. I mean, I started rewatching Paranoid Agent because it's one of my favorite TV shows ever made.
Who likes to vibe.
I love to vibe. That show is one of my favorite things that's ever been made, let alone like one of my favorite TV shows. And the opening of it is so. That's why I say it feels like kind of. Yeah, it's like sketches in preparation for Paprika in a lot of ways. Because it opens with this montage of everybody in Tokyo, like crammed into the train, like busy walking in the street, and everybody's on their phones. And it's this kind of Greek chorus of everybody being like, I can't do this. Like, I couldn't help it. I was forced to do this. Like all these very kind of abstract expressions of helplessness. Of like I don't have any power, blaming things on other people, and it's very much Cop Kon coming. Like the series, not to spoil anything, is a lot of Cop Kon coming in and being like, these are like escapist fantasies that people are, falling into to avoid essentially being adults. And I think ultimately, like as fun and imaginative and all this freewheeling stuff that Kon is, which we love him for, I think the reason I really love him is that he really is grappling with like what it means to grow up.
Yeah.
Like and like reckon with the real world in a way that I think he doesn't, I think as a human being, want people to let go of that, even as he is letting us like into these wild fantasies. It's always about like, well, what are you going to do in the world? What are you going to do with yourself in your real life?
Yeah.
And I just love that. I think it can be like quite poetic in his hands.
I mean, one of my favorite movies that I've watched so many times is the documentary that Lance Bangs and Spike Jonze made about Maurice Sendak.
Yeah.
That was them filming interviews with him over years as they were developing, and then filming the Where the Wild Things Are movie called Tell Them Anything You Want.
Yeah.
That is a lot of Maurice Sendak like dealing with, I have no idea. I don't understand why I got stuck on childhood. Why I am like stuck just kind of making works about the nightmares of children, basically. Like it is not a choice. It is not that that's like what I like as a business strategy or career strategy.
Sure, right. Yeah. It's not like
he's just like, in some way, my psyche got stuck on the dial.
Yeah.
In other ways, I feel like I've always been a 90-year-old man. Like, it's a 90-year-old guy being like, I'm going to die tomorrow. But also, and being like, I felt this way my whole life.
Right.
I was forced to grow up.
Right.
But then also, like, I cannot artistically move past basically the feelings of an 8-year-old. And doing them in a somewhat mature way. But I do think a lot of the most interesting artists in sort of like childlike areas, right? People who work in areas of like high genre or high fantasy or sort of childlike logic or whatever are always kind of fighting themselves internally of like, I don't understand why this is what I keep going back to.
Some are, but I think there's a lot of indulging in the thing itself. Like I guess less in I guess stuff made expressly for kids, and I'm thinking more of just like the biggest entertainments of our that we are living in a permanent regressive adolescence, and that's why even beyond the obvious talking points like Marvel or whatever the fuck, or just endless remix of Star Wars, you even just have in pop music, we're just doing all the songs that we liked when we were teenagers all over again, that we're kind of stuck in this loop without a future. And that does feel like a sickness. That feels like some sort of social ill right now. I hate to be like judgmental about things, but when you look at it as a whole, it does feel like we're a little bit stagnant right now as a culture. And I think that's the kind of thing that
everything feels good right now. Everyone's brains.
We love it. Yeah.
Everyone's ways of processing reality and talking to each other.
Yeah, it's great.
And having fun.
Yeah.
But that like
we're having fun.
Things like this, or like Matrix Resurrections, where it does feel like the storyteller's going like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, why are we still doing And I think the Wachowskis are incredible at talking about this stuff too.
Yes.
They are like, among the few like sage big scale pop culture storytellers who have a grasp of that, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Yeah, I think that's sort of the debate going on in all of Kon's work about is this going to be a opiate of the masses?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Or is this going to be something that can actually heal people and let them move forward with their lives?
Yeah.
And that it's both ultimately. It kind of functions as both, and you kind of got to live with that.
I think that is very well said.
Do you think Dreaming Kids, which is such a great title,
Mhm.
like is like something Kon wanted to make? It's some kind of like, fantasy project of his,
Interesting.
like that he was
I don't
always
know.
like thinking about,
There's-
or is it more like, no, this is the kind of thing like that he would have been waiting to see?
JJ
Like,
put it in the dossier. There was the sort of
Dreamland thing.
his
the shorts.
the project that he died trying to get off the ground was called the Dream
right,
Machine.
the Dream
Dream
Machine,
Machine,
or
that's what it
Dreaming
was, yeah.
Machine, right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Like a
And
sort of young adult fantasy.
That's the thing. That was him explicitly trying to make a film for children for the
But
first
it was
time,
going to
basically.
be all about robots. So
Yeah.
I guess it's a vague connection at best.
Yes.
I mean, the thing that I think of when I think of this sort of argument about regression in pop culture is always, again, I'm just going to be like, guys, you can like what you like.
Mhm.
Enjoy the movies that you enjoy.
What's she going to shit on now?
I have my opinions about things, and that's fine. And it has nothing to do with what you think about or what you like. Enjoy what you enjoy. But
Okay.
the I'm not talking to you guys. The motion picture Inside Out.
I thought you were going to say Clifford. Sorry.
No, we all love childhood,
Uh-oh.
obviously.
And are we about to meet joy or anger right now, Emily?
I'll
If we're
tell
going to
you,
talk about Inside
I think
Out.
I'm meeting anxiety. One
I'm
of the
meeting
Yeah.
fear.
exciting new
I'm
characters
meeting
we're
fear.
meeting this summer,
It's
and
nothing
Inside
but
Out 2.
All my criticism is based in fear.
Right.
But one of the things that irritated me so deeply about that movie was this is a larger complaint I have about Pixar in general, or like the ethos of Pixar in general, but like the whole conceit of Bing Bong,
Uh-huh.
The
the
little
imaginary
elephant.
friend.
Wait, this is Clifford coded, and that's Richard Kind.
Nothing against Richard Kind.
It'd be weird if you were like, what I don't like about it was Richard
Richard
Kind.
Kind, yeah.
Performance.
He's bringing what
And
he
that's
needs
what-
to bring.
yeah.
He feels miscast.
But there's something in that film about how this figment of childhood that got this child through some things.
Sure.
Some imaginary friend from
Needs to
exactly,
die,
a
basically.
time.
Needs to sacrifice himself.
Well, but it's not. The film doesn't have a healthy way of looking at it, I don't think, because it still tugs at your heartstrings, and you as the viewer don't want Bing Bong to die.
Sure.
And I think a more responsible film would be like, no, fuck him, kick him over the cliff.
Wait a second. For one,
No,
these
no,
films
I'm
are for children.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, I again, I also don't I don't think that you should make a film for children about the brain of a child like that. Like, I think it's just like, I think it can only wreak havoc. But I just personally, it's distasteful to me and unnatural. But
You're watching Herman's Head, and you're like, this is personally.
Now let's just
distasteful.
remember, Emily started these statements with "Don't get mad at me," so you're not allowed to get mad at her.
You know,
Yeah,
I've only
you're
seen
not-
Inside Out the one time. I only saw it in theaters.
Really?
Never
I
seen
saw
it
it
again.
at the Cannes Film Festival.
It was
so
there.
great.
Do you
And-
like Inside Out? You like Inside
I like
Out.
it quite a bit.
But
It's
I
not
have
one of
only
my
seen it the
top
one
tier
time.
Pixar.
Yeah, I liked it when
That
I
is
saw
funny
it.
because your review at the time was, "I can't wait to see it again."
Really?
Yeah, I feel like I remember your review of Inside Out, or at least your fucking
Right,
tweet
take,
out of
yes.
the theater being like,
I'll watch this one again.
the
Like,
whole time I was watching it, I was thinking how
First
badly
Pixar.
I can't wait to watch it a second time, which is the ultimate compliment, or something said like that. Emily had the opposite reaction.
Yeah.
I can't find a tweet by myself about it, but that doesn't mean anything. I was going to say something about Inside Out. Well, I just feel like Toy Story 3 has the same problem where it's like,
Yeah.
they're like, aren't you sad about this? And I'm like, giving your toys away? Like,
You gotta
no,
do it.
It's
what?
why I think Toy Story 4 is better than Toy Story 3.
I think Toy Story 4 is better
Toy Story
than
4 makes Toy Story 3 look like Toy Story.
Yeah, I mean, I think Toy Story 4 has become my second favorite Toy Story in the rewatching that I'm doing endlessly with my child. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's unimportant.
But you're also
But we have not done Inside Out yet.
You haven't been watching 3 with her, right?
We watched it a couple times.
Okay.
It's her least favorite. The only thing she likes is The Big Baby, which I agree with her.
Yeah.
The Big Baby is good.
Yeah.
Like, look, I think it's a great idea to make a movie for kids about their toys. That's cool. But I think after a while,
You're right. It is good and cool.
I know you love them, but like, I just think after a while, it's like I start to feel like the chairman, where I'm like, let kids have their toys. Let them like this meta narrative that's being imposed on how toys work,
right?
What their feelings are, what you're supposed to do with them.
That's why Toy Story's annoying, where they're like, when you stop playing with your toys, you're hurting a sentient immortal being,
and
I'm
that's
like,
such a bad, like,
bro.
I don't like the use of the word annoying here, but go on.
I mean, it's what, if anything, it's indulgent, because I think as a kid you think that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really assigned a lot of, like, you anthropomorphize your toys. You assign them emotions. You feel bad when you think they feel lonely. And if anything, I think it's like it would be a more interesting endeavor to make a kids movie where that's not an issue, where the toys like are actually stoked when you're away, and like they live their own lives and they can be separate from you.
Well,
like
it's just sort of true in Toy Story, but no one ever says it until like Bo Peep in the 4th one.
I haven't seen the 4th. I'll admit I haven't seen the 4th.
In the 4th,
that changes everything.
You might like
Emily.
It.
4's kind of fucking with the shit you're talking about.
The 4th is the one that's the most about like toy sentience rather than like
they're not extensions of us.
They
are their own creators.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, not important. Can't talk about Toy Story more on this podcast.
I mean,
illegal.
we're talking about the relationship between dreams and movies,
yes.
right?
Yeah, and play and childhood.
There is this fascinating thing. You think about Toy Story being the first film Pixar makes, not knowing the outsized cultural influence it was going to have, that it would be a series that would last for decades because we can't ever move on from anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all these things we're talking about. That is a movie of a bunch of adults who, to some degree, are stuck in a sustained state of permanent adolescence,
bunch of taquitos,
trying to write a movie based on the logic they remember having as a child. When I was a child, I played with toys and thought of it like this. And that becomes a movie that then codifies a logic that is then applied back to children who are watching it rather than adults reflecting back on it.
Yeah.
And I was hanging out with my friend, his daughter, who's like 4.5 years old, maybe. And she watches Toy Story a bunch.
Sure.
We went to Chuck E. Cheese. She got like fucking toys from the prize, and in the backseat of the car, she was like acting out scenarios.
All
with
my
her.
daughter does is use the toys to act out scenarios. Right.
Right. And he was like,
Emily's been witnessing it.
It's interesting. Well, hello, Rick.
Yep.
It's interesting how much she does this, and it sounds like Bonnie in Toy Story. Like she's in the state where they have voices and narratives and this and that. And then I was like, do you think that is that movie getting that right? Or do you think because she's been watching Toy Story from such a young age,
it's the movie getting it right?
Play acting.
But I like your question.
But it's an interesting question. I don't have an answer.
Well, if it wasn't Toy Story she was play acting, it would be something else she was play acting.
Totally.
Right.
But
You
it's the
see
difference of like, are you play acting like in Toy Story, Andy is play acting a Western with his toys, right? That is, he is taking the Western stories he has seen in media, and he is like...
he's a child that lives in the 1950s.
Yes, and he's telling them
super normal
through his toys. Whereas if you have movies about kids playing with toys and imbuing them with life, are the kids then acting out?
Bonnie is such a Giga Chad compared to Andy. That's all I'll say.
Not denying that, but I think you're too hard on Andy.
Fucking hate Andy.
Man, you know what looks weird when you watch it now? Toy Story 1.
And I only think the Andy of it.
No, there's other things, but if it's mostly the human faces, obviously. The strangest.
The Andy's.
Because Sid looks weird too.
Yeah, they all have weird mouths that are full of too many teeth.
Sid's mouth is a tough hang.
But in a way that's like, I think it helps the movie.
Sure.
Okay.
I think he looks monstrous in a way
it's
that
better than,
versus Andy is, yes.
Hey, you know, it's like...
Hey. Sorry, I can't do an Andy impression. It's impossible. I cannot make my face look like that.
Yeehaw, cowboy. Yeah. It's hard. You were just pulling your skin back like Brazil style.
Exactly. All right. Yeah. I'm going to read from the dossier because we're so off track and we're wrapping up, obviously. Yeah. Satoshi Kon felt like he'd reached the end of an era with the release of this movie. This movie premiered at the Venice Film Festival.
Big deal.
And then at New York, he had leveled up beyond like you premiere at an animation festival. Like he was
his
now
movies
like
would get a lot of pomp and circumstance in Japan, and then would premiere at sort of like anime specific festivals in the States, and then get a release much later.
But his whole thing is like he was like, look, I read this. when I was, before I made any movies, I kind of was playing with these themes in my early movies. I have now made Paprika.
What do I do?
I've got some closure. I'm not going to abandon this topic, but I do feel like I've reached a goal on this kind of like dream, reality thing.
There's a little bit of like the Fosse, all that jazz thing where it's like, I kind of felt like this was going to be my last movie and I don't totally know what to do with myself now. Even though Kon was not chronically,
No,
yeah.
but yeah. Obviously, like we said, he was sort of planning on making basically a children's film, this Dreaming Machine movie, fantasy adventure targeted at younger audiences. But then, obviously, in May 2010, he's diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He says his biggest regret is he didn't get to make the movie. That the people he worked with didn't get to finish the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Some people apparently have tried to salvage it because there's some storyboarding and stuff like that. But then finally, we're kind of like, it's his movie. It would never be doable, really.
Yeah,
somebody will AI it. I mean, by which I mean AI, the motion picture, and not.
Of course, he was an avid blogger, and there was one final blog post he wrote that his family posted posthumously that JJ included here.
Right.
But his final blog post is him basically apologizing to everyone who worked with him.
Right, that's what I'm referencing.
The notion that their work was going to go wasted because he would not be able to make the film. And the end of it is, I haven't been idly waiting for death. Like, the need to apologize for, like, I don't want you to think I've just been lazily dying.
Right.
I haven't been idly waiting for death. Even now, I'm thinking with my weak brain of ways to let the work live even after I am gone. But they are all shallow ideas. When I told Maruyama-san about my concerns about Dreaming Machine, he just said, "Don't worry, we'll figure out something, so don't worry." Right. I wept uncontrollably.
Oh, God.
Obviously, his death was sort of shocking because nobody really knew he was sick. And so, it kind of came out of nowhere for 99% of people. A lot of filmmakers, both Japanese and American, outpouring of love and sort of this influence and all that, but what can you do? It is the end of his career. There's no more,
and a totemic body of work that has just only continued to grow in every passing year.
Very true. We should do the box office game, but
what
are there any
your
more
rankings?
Paprika things? Yeah, so you can have any ranking you want.
It's 4 masterpieces.
It's tough to really worry about it too much. I think
it's got to be your personal preference, and not what you think is the superior film. Because I think they're all pretty great.
Paprika, Blue, Millennium, Tokyo.
Oh, interesting.
But I could be talked into a lot of order.
That was top down.
Yeah.
Top down. Paprika first, Tokyo last.
Millennium is my favorite with a bullet, but I feel it just hits certain things for me.
That's such a Griffy.
It's a very
It is
Griffy
so
movie.
Griffy. Yeah, it's such a good movie. It's really, it's sometimes when I'm watching it, I feel like it's my favorite.
You're like, this is not just his best movie, but like one of the great movies.
Yeah. Right.
Which is how I feel watching basically all his movies. Emily, I feel like Perfect Blue is probably your
my
heart's
favorite. Yeah, it's my, I just think it's, I dressed up as Mima for Halloween like 2 years ago. Like I am like, I just think that movie does so much and is so impressive as a first movie. But then this one is like, he wasn't able to even do the stuff that he's able to do in Paprika yet, like on a technical level, and also just where he was as a storyteller. And so it's hard for me to even rank those. But I think as far as my personal faves, I think it probably goes, Perfect Blue, Paprika. God, it sucks. It's just like Millennium Actress doesn't feel like it should be third, but because I love it. It's just
Because you don't need to like stress it because like they're basically like, to me it's like kind of like 10, 10, 10, 9 or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're all high level.
I would say I go Millennium Actress 1, then Perfect Blue number 2, Paprika number 3, Tokyo Godfathers number 4.
Right.
But Tokyo Godfathers is still in the top 10% of movies we've ever covered on the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Love that movie.
Yeah, it's
Got
hard.
a bunch of hobos.
And
they
then,
rule.
like,
They're pretty cool.
They
got some rough edges.
Well, that's
some
truly what makes them human,
unsavory,
though.
some unsavory aspects. I mean, and then if we're including paranoia agent in that, then it gets all fucked up for me, because I'm tempted to say that paranoia agent is my favorite thing, but it's hard because there are some, episodes that are stronger than others. But as a whole, as like a thing, like I put it up there with Twin Peaks as far as like just overall like creations by somebody that I admire and have been extremely, influential to me.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
We're recording that episode later. It's the one thing, I haven't checked out yet. So
the one
I
thing you haven't
can't
checked
speak
out
to
is a paranoia agent.
Yeah.
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 Well, I know that I'm not. This is not a paranoia agent podcast, but
We're doing it on Patreon though. It will have come out by now.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
the other thing that I would say, just that I think it has to do with his full filmography and that one as well, is that I think what he's able to do on that show, that he gets out on a spiritual level in Paprika, but I think he's able to get on a more minute level in Paranoia Agent, is that I think he's, in addition to these individual characters, like he's so interested in like sociological phenomenon, and like what the interconnectedness of people and how everybody's fortunes sort of and the stories that we're telling each other all kind of feed onto one another, which is why I think that like Tokyo Godfathers, even if it's not my favorite, is just so integral to like the Kon vision to me, because that movie is so much about a bunch of people from disparate parts of Tokyo all like kind of eventually being symbiotic in some way.
Right.
And that is such a like, I think that's an underrated part of what he's interested in. What I think he does well is like this super humanistic just embrace of everybody and all of their concerns and worries and fears. And yeah.
That feels very genuine. It doesn't feel like him trying to do some reassuring kumbaya thing.
No.
It feels in the way of a lot of a certain type of artist who is just like overly sensitive to other people's feelings and empathetic.
Yeah, he's
which
a
isn't to
real
say
empath.
selfless, but yes, I think he was a true empath who felt like the collective struggles very deeply.
Isn't there that, like, I don't know, there's some meme, the side by side of Miyazaki and Kon, where it's like quotes from them and Miyazaki saying something typically Miyazaki doomy about how like, everything is shit and I hate it all. And then it's like a picture of his work, like a beautiful pastoral thing of like animals and streams and stuff. And then Kon is like something super humanistic and sweet and empathetic. And it's like the parade or the guy's head coming out of the side of the chairman and exploding into butterflies. It's just like, but that just speaks to the balance, I think, of all of this stuff, is that, you get out certain parts of yourself in the stories that you're telling or the things that you're interested in that don't necessarily show up in the quotes that you give to the press.
Well, in our movies, like aspirational, representational, or both, or neither. Like what are we trying to do with this medium? Which is obviously a great many different things depending on the person.
Yeah.
Can we play a box office game?
Yeah, so it comes out
May 25th, 2007, Griffin.
Okay, so Spider-Man 3, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, and Shrek the Third are all in the top 5, correct?
Yes.
It's uninteresting, but
you
it's
got the top 3.
It was that was the month.
Do them in the right order.
Okay, so
new this week.
Pirates had just come out that weekend. It was the Memorial Day release.
Oh my God.
Number 2
would be Shrek the
second
Third.
weekend.
That was
Shrek
second
the
weekend.
Number 3 is it's in its 4th weekend.
Right, because it came out the first weekend.
Spider-Man 3.
Right, okay.
Number 4 is pretty wild, though. It's new this week that this film was released somewhat wide, 1,600 screens, is bananas. It's an F Cinema Score film. I think we'll cover it on this podcast one day.
It's not Bug, is it?
It's William Friedkin's Bug.
Yeah.
What insane person at Lionsgate was like, I think we should put that up against Pirates of the Caribbean 3.
A decision-making process so twisted, it feels like something out of Tracy Letts' Bug.
Like, everyone's like, fuck, Pirates and Spider-Man and Shrek are all sold out. What's this movie? I'll walk in here. What's going on? Oh, Ashley Judd, love her. How weird could it be?
Well, this was a month that broke Hollywood a little bit because like the 3 biggest current franchises at that moment decided to all put their third entries in May, and people were like, they're going to cannibalize each other. There's no way.
Which they didn't.
They didn't.
But they were all bad. I think Pirates 3 is good.
I agree with you.
But I don't really, all those movies were artistically failures.
All three were far and away the least popular entries with the public of their franchises, even though all three made
tons and tons
crazy amounts of money, didn't cannibalize each other, arguably boosted each other. But the rest of that month was like kind of like everyone was too terrified. Like, Pirates might bomb next to Shrek. Why would we put something out there?
Well,
so there's like Lucky You, which had been on a shelf for a long time. They're like Bug, we can put out in fucking 1,600 screens because no one's trying to counter program against any of these.
You seen Bug, Emily?
No, I have not.
Dig Bug.
It's good.
You dig Bug. Bug's cool.
I dig Bug.
Bug, yeah. You dig Bug.
I mean, speaking of that, another film that's expanding this week from its limited release, and another, quasi indie, from a small studio.
Quasi-indie from a small studio.
It's a comedy, very dark comedy.
It's a very dark comedy in May of 2007.
Also a filmmaker's last film, tragically.
Is it Prairie Home Companion?
No.
That was a 06 release.
I think that's right.
It's a very dark comedy that was a filmmaker.
Very dark is maybe too strong, but it's a dark.
Was it a surprising death or was he was up?
It was a tragic.
She.
The director is a woman.
A tragic, surprising death. This is her final film. It's a very dark comedy from a somewhat indie distributor that comes out in May 2007 and went semi-wide.
So,
do you have an idea, Emily?
no,
I'm like
really
totally struggling on what this
This movie's had a very long tail. There's been an adaptation of it on the stage.
Oh, it's Waitress.
Adrienne Shelly's Waitress.
Yeah.
Pretty good movie.
Yeah.
But one of those things where at the time people were like, this is neither fish nor foul. Like, what is this? How strange.
And ended up being like quite a big
kind
hit.
of,
and as you said, has just really survived.
A solid indie hit, and then has had like a crazy long tail.
Yeah.
Right. Because she had already passed by the time it premiered at Sundance. Like it got bought for a crazy amount of money at Sundance, and people went like, are they overpaying because of the narrative and the tragedy? Is this going to connect with audiences? And then it really, really did.
It made a lot of money for a tiny budget indie movie. You've also got 28 Weeks Later, a film we've discussed on this podcast. Disturbia.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Hanging out up there.
That was because Disturbia opened in April and then continued being #1 the entire month. And the weekend before Spider-Man 3 comes out, Disturbia was #1 with like 6 million because no one wanted to have their film get steamrolled by those.
Yes, exactly. Disturbia did good.
Disturbia made money.
Georgia Rule, normal movie.
Super normal.
Wild Hogs, another normal one.
Yeah.
Wild Hogs weirdly
What a
rebounding
time.
13 weeks in. And Fracture, which is
I Killed My Wife.
I Killed My Wife, Prove It, or I Killed My Wife, Don't Prove It. I can't remember what the tagline is. I recently watched that for Legal Draft.
Right. The poster is just Anthony Hopkins' face with I killed my wife in triangle letters.
I shot my wife, in fact.
I shot my wife.
Normal poster.
It's a wild poster.
Just imagine that plastered over and over with like the wheat paste.
Look, this is what New York City was like in 2007.
I shot my wife. I shot my wife.
On every street corner.
There's another version that has Gosling's face on it too,
And what's it say? He shot his wife.
And then then I'm from the Bronx.
Yeah.
And then there was this version that was I shot my wife, prove it. Which is, you're like, huh?
Who was the wife in that? Emmett Davids?
That sounds right. I just rewatched it and I couldn't tell you, but let me look it up.
I feel like I also watched it for the Legal Draft.
What if it was
It's not a bad movie. Yeah, Emmett
Fracture
Davis.
and I Know Who Killed Me poster side by side.
I mean, they were kind of around the same time.
Yeah, that comes out later this
Same
summer.
font, same typeface.
So that's the deal.
Wow.
With the box office. Obviously, Paprika's opening, unlimited amount of screens, well below all of that. We have nothing more to say, I think.
Well, excuse me.
Except to announce our next miniseries.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
And of course, we should thank our guests for coming and not making anybody mad.
I'm
To be clear,
worried now.
No,
Guys,
you shouldn't be worried. Like, it was a very uncontentious thing. Oh, Ben.
No.
okay.
You shouldn't be worried.
Ben is mad.
Ben is not mad.
Ben is mad because Inside Out is his favorite
He's
movie.
fuming.
It certainly is
Yes.
Yeah. Wreck-It Ralph is his favorite movie, and that's how you know Ben is mature.
And my daughter has seen Wreck-It Ralph.
And
Well, she likes it. She calls it Big Grumpy Man.
I like that.
Cute. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's cute.
For the record,
I don't like her watching it.
I like Wreck-It Ralph.
Wreck-It Ralph's good.
I think it's a good movie.
I don't like her watching it because it's got like too many like guns in it. You know, like all this sort of hero's duty stuff is a little
sure.
too.
That's
Sure.
She kind of just like doesn't care and wants to get to the candy world.
You could actually do a good father-daughter Halloween costume of you as Ralph and her as Vanellope. You have the right size.
It's possible. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Right now. Although she's shooting up.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not going to last long.
Yep. What's our next miniseries? Well, actually, you know what? The next thing we're going to cover is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Speaking of Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
So
I'm excited.
Cool. Me too. It looks good.
I just saw the trailer in IMAX before Dune 2. Oh, yeah, I'm stoked now.
Yeah.
I went from being like, yeah, I'll see that to like, okay, yeah.
The new
yeah.
trailer is really good. I want to say this too. I think, and I hope this bears out in the final product delivering. I think it is good that there's a little bit of, I don't know, arms crossed, show me what you got energy for this movie.
Sure. That's what there was last time.
Rather than just
the
like,
expectations. If we were going into this with fucking Phantom Menace expectations, I'd be more worried.
Yeah,
I'm just worried that Hemsworth is too subtle. That's my fear. Is that he's not dialing it up. To be clear, I'm so excited to see him in that movie with like a fucking handlebar mustache going like, rah, 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 rah. Like that sounds great to me.
Yeah, the whole thing looks great.
I just want to see everybody be super
Tom
Australian.
Burke's in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking
Tom Burke is in it.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah. I'm very excited for it. We'll be covering that next week. And in 2 weeks, we begin our next miniseries, a long overdue series, a long promised series,
overdue.
a long threatened series. Someone who kept losing in March Madness, and we finally decided to make it happen. We're a couple breast men over here.
Yeah.
David and I.
Call me Schwimmer, call him Cooper.
Because we're covering Martin Brest.
Wow, a reference for 5 people. We will be covering the short and
his
dramatic filmography of Martin Brest.
A real classic blank check, rise and fall kind of career.
Going in Style, which I've never seen. That's our first, obviously, episode. And then Beverly Hills Cop, Midnight Run, Scent of a Woman, Meet Joe Black, Geely. Goodbye. Ta-ta.
His career ended on the type of movie we now use as a verb.
Yeah.
It's like the Ishtar thing of like, you use that as shorthand for someone sort of imploding. And much like Elaine May, he is still alive and just has not made a film now in 20 years.
20 years.
Is still around, is still constantly threatening. We'd love for him to come back. But in the meantime, we're excited to talk about those movies.
Absolutely. So that's what we're doing next on this show.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been fun talking about this guy and talking to this girl.
Oh.
Hi.
Woman.
All right. Fine.
Both.
Emily.
You're a girl and yet a woman.
And yes.
Shogun.
Shogun.
Yeah.
I think by the time this is out, we will have had our last...
Shogun's doing really badly, but I think this will bump it to some folks, right? Yeah, that show's definitely in
Nobody's
need of help.
seen it, but hopefully, just give it a little whirl on Hulu.org.
Yeah, Hulu's an org.
I co-wrote the finale episode with the amazing Megan Wong, and I also wrote the 4th episode,
which was good.
TV takes so long that show was the reason you moved to LA in the first place.
Yeah, that's the reason I moved to LA in 2019.
Yep. Yes. I remember you telling me summer 2019, like I'm moving to LA.
So
and I was
just
like, fuck you.
To put this in perspective, Emily comes on to do the Fury Road episode, coming back to New York for the first time since you'd moved to LA.
After we wrapped The Room.
Yes.
Right.
Or I think I was actually still writing the finale when I was in New York then.
I believe that is correct.
Yeah, I was still working, but just not in The Room. So that's how much time it took to make that dang show. So hopefully people watch it.
Shogun finale is about to air and Furiosa is about to come out.
That's so crazy.
Right?
That is funny. That is funny.
That's crazy.
That is
Oh
funny.
my God.
That's the passage of 5
George
years.
Miller, that guy just knocks shit together, Like
Right.
he really does.
No, because even at that episode, we were like, and he's saying he's going to make another one, but that's not going to happen. Right.
It takes him forever, right?
Yeah.
When was 1,000 Years of Long?
3,000 Years Long was
2 years ago?
22, right?
That was Ben Living Room era, is all I remember.
Okay.
Fucking movie is so good.
Yeah, it's so good. You know what that guy does?
Make good movies.
Yes.
He does. He do make good movie. And so did Martin Brest for a short time before he started making bad ones. But they're all going to be really fun to talk about.
They're all interesting.
Yes.
You know who else made good movies?
Satoshi Kon.
Satoshi Kon.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect career.
Good night, Captain. Glad we finally did him on this show, and I hopefully celebrated him appropriately.
I have to say, as of airing right now, you guys haven't aired any, or as of recording right now, you guys haven't aired any of the episodes, but everybody I know that I've mentioned that I'm doing this up, everybody is stoked for this. So I'm so glad you guys did it too.
People saw your skeets and were excited at extrapolating that we were finally covering him and you were coming back.
And I'm back.
I said it the wrong way. That you were coming back and we were covering him.
So you'll be back, of course.
Yes, I'll get my first class ticket back to New York on Blank Check Airlines,
as is promised. Can we announce this on air that you are formally not resigning from your position as past and future guest of the show?
Wait, what? What's the spit?
You saying you'll be back,
of course.
Feels like it's like countering a narrative that Emily is retiring from Blank Check.
Probably is a narrative. There's so many narratives out there.
Yeah, we gotta fight all the narratives. If there's one thing I've learned from Paprika and the films of Satoshi Kon, we must fight all narratives.
We must fight all narratives. Thank you for being here, Emily.
Thank you for having me. Great to be back in the seat.
The old seat. And thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for co-producing this show. AJ McKee and Alex Barron for editing. I've decided this time I'm doing the wrap-up, making unbroken eye contact with Ben. AJ McKee and also our production coordinator. Pat Reynolds, Joe Bowen for our artwork. Thank you very much. Leigh Montgomery and the Great American Novel. Ben is getting uncomfortable. He's now breaking the eye contact. He's looking the other way. Yeah, I've adjusted my seat and my mic arm, so I'm now just fully locked in on him.
This is what the internet has done to our brains.
Any
he can't even maintain
neck
eye contact with his friend.
Body. Thanks to JJ Birch for our research. Reminder that once again you are fired for that "what is he smoking" joke. Tune in next week for Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
With no dossier, apparently. Because he's fired.
He's fired. Yeah, and also he hasn't seen it yet. None of us have seen it yet. We're talking about the future. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon, Blank Check special features, where I think we're just wrapping up the Turtles now, and we'll be soon transitioning into the March Madness winter tabletop games. But also Paranoia Agent, much discussed on this episode, will be happening over there on Patreon.
We actually kind of we're like in the center of Turtle Land.
Oh, great.
Turtle.
We're raising shell.
Yeah.
And as always, I want to remind everyone that we specifically told you all that you are not allowed to get mad.